Chapter 30-28. The third prince's words made sense. In his opinion, the fifth prince had already lost so miserably. Ji Tianxing had won a complete victory, and his daughter Wuxia had been rescued safely. It was a perfect ending. Why did he have to kill the fifth prince himself? In that case, Ji Tianxing would become a deadly enemy of the Bloody Blaze Kingdom. If he didn't want to die, he could only flee to the end of the world. However, the third prince was someone who sought stability and was even somewhat indecisive. He could never understand Ji Tianxing's state of mind. Ji Tianxing glanced at him and said expressionlessly, "I said that I came here today not only to save Wuxia, but also to kill the fifth prince and all his lackeys. As for fleeing to the end of the world, the Bloody Blaze Kingdom is not my home. What's the loss of escaping from here?" The third prince was suddenly choked. He had a complicated expression, but he didn't know how to persuade him. The second prince had been silent, and his expression didn't change. In fact, he was inclined to kill, and he also hoped that Ji Tianxing would kill the fifth prince. That would be the best result for him. Ji Tianxing held the sword of burial of heaven tightly and slashed at the fifth prince with all his strength. The fifth prince's face suddenly turned ashen. While fleeing in a panic, he roared, "Second prince, third prince. If you sit and watch this lunatic kill me, my father will never forgive you." He was at the end of his rope, and he had become a commander without an army. If he wanted to live, he could only threaten the second prince and the third prince with morality. But the second prince was expressionless and pretended not to hear anything. The third prince wanted to stop him, but he didn't want to be enemies with Ji Tianxing, so he kept hesitating. Boom! The fifth prince was seriously injured and couldn't avoid the sword of burial of heaven's attack. With a loud explosion, the sword of burial of heaven slashed the ancient bronze chessboard. Instantly, the millstone-sized ancient bronze chessboard was split into two halves by the sword and was sent flying dozens of miles away. The fifth prince was also sent flying 30 miles and fell into the ruins. Ji Tianxing chased after the fifth prince again with his sword in hand. Once again he swung his sword and slashed out two dazzling golden sword lights at the fifth prince. The fifth prince was so shocked that his soul almost left his body. His eyes almost popped out of their sockets. At this critical moment he could only use the bronze furnace to protect himself. Clang! The sword of burial of heaven fiercely slashed at the bronze pill furnace, causing another loud explosion. The cauldron trembled violently and flew for 20 miles before it finally stabilized. The fifth prince was not hit by the sword, but he was shocked to the point of spitting out blood. He looked even more dispirited. As the power of the bronze pill furnace weakened, the poison in his body could no longer be suppressed and began to spread again. Helpless, he hurriedly drew upon the power of the pill furnace to suppress the violent poison in his body. At this moment, Ji Tianxing caught up and slashed out a third time. Shua! A dazzling golden sword radiance, carrying an incomparably violent killing intent, suddenly slashed towards the fifth prince. The fifth prince was so weak that he did not have the strength to dodge. Just as he was about to be beheaded by the sword light, his head separated from his body. He felt that his time of death had come. His expression was one of fear, despair, and helplessness. The second prince's blood was boiling. He secretly clenched his fists, his heart filled with anticipation. The third prince, on the other hand, was nervous. His heart was in his throat and he could not help but open his mouth to stop it. But at this moment, an angry roar suddenly exploded in the sky. A dazzling blood-red blade of light suddenly descended from the sky. "How dare you assassinate the prince? You must be tired of living." As the powerful and mighty voice rang out, the blood-red blade of light that was hundreds of feet long collided with the dazzling golden sword radiance. Bang! In a deafening muffled sound, the sword radiance and the blood-red blade of light collapsed at the same time, exploding into fragments of sword radiance that filled the sky. The violent and devastating shockwave sent the bronze cauldron and the fifth prince flying. Fortunately, Ji Tianxing's sword radiance was blocked, and the fifth prince's life was saved. But unfortunately, the shockwave of the explosion wrapped around the sword radiance fragments and minced his body into a bloody mess. In particular, his two legs were actually minced into pieces by the sword radiance, leaving only a pale red divine bone. The fifth prince, who was already severely injured, could no longer bear the pain of losing his legs. His vision turned black and he fainted. The fifth prince and the bronze cauldron fell from the sky and were about to fall into the ruins. At this moment, a purple figure descended from the sky. He struck out a giant blood-red palm and caught the cauldron and the fifth prince, holding them in the palm of his hand. Tianxing and the two princes' gazes immediately fell on the purple figure. It was a burly old man in a purple robe. His purple hair danced in the wind. He had a square face. His beard and eyebrows were already white. His eyes were as deep as the sea of stars, and his entire body exuded a domineering aura. When the second prince and the third prince saw the person's appearance clearly, they frowned fiercely and revealed a look of surprise. Tianxing narrowed his eyes. His expression became vigilant and alert. "It's you." He recognized that this person was the purple-robed Sir God who ambushed him in the outskirts of Monarch City last night. At that time he was only 3,000 miles away from Qingyang Courtyard when he was ambushed by 3 Sir Gods. The leader was the purple-robed bronze-masked Sir God of the 8th Heaven Realm. Although the old man in front of him did not wear a mask and revealed his true face, his divine aura was definitely not weak. However, the aura of his divine power could not be wrong. Tianxing was sure that it was him. The purple-robed old man glanced at him and sneered. "It's me. What do you want?" After that, the purple-robed old man ignored him. He carried the fifth prince in his arms and silently performed a spell to treat him. At the same time, another cold and majestic voice came from not far away. "Where did this arrogant madman come from? How dare he? How dare he openly assassinate the Prince of Monarch Kingdom within the borders of Bloodflame Kingdom? I have traveled to all the kingdoms and have never seen such a ferocious person." Hearing this voice, Tianxing and the two princes quickly looked to the south. They saw a handsome young man in a black brocade robe walking in the air. This person was from the Great Yen God clan. He was close to 10 feet tall and had a head of red hair. He looked handsome and refined. He wore a beautiful and exquisite crown on his head. His belt and accessories were incomparably precious. Most importantly, the black brocade robe he wore was embroidered with 8 lifelike golden divine dragons. One look and one could tell that this refined young Sir God clan member had an extremely honorable status. Behind him there were 4 high divine lords dressed in different attire. 2 of the Sir Gods had ugly and distorted faces. Their auras were also chaotic. It was obvious that they were severely injured. Both of them stared coldly at Tianxing. Intense killing intent emanated from their bodies. Tianxing sensed that something was amiss. He probed with his divine perception and discovered that the 2 Sir Gods had been poisoned. "It's them." He instantly understood that the 2 ugly Sir Gods were the unlucky fellows who tried to kill him last night and were poisoned by him. At this moment he finally understood the black-robed young man's identity. This person was the 5th prince's backer, the mastermind behind this plan. Chapter 30-29. The unconscious 5th prince was saved by an 8th-level divine lord realm purple-robed elder. The black-robed youth had 4 divine lords with him, and his strength was unfathomable. It was impossible for Tianxing to kill the 5th prince now. He frowned and stared coldly at the black-robed youth. "Who are you?" The black-robed youth raised his eyebrows and glanced at him with interest. "You don't even know me? People like you who are ignorant yet arrogant and despotic have no idea what you're doing. I wonder how you managed to survive until today." The second and third princes bowed and cupped their hands at the black-robed youth. "Greetings, Prince Lien." The 2 of them had respectful postures. Even the divine lord powerhouses and imperial guards under them bowed their heads with solemn expressions. This puzzled Tianxing. "Prince Lien? A prince of the blood-flame divine kingdom? The king's brother? The uncles of the princes? No. Even if he's the king's elder brother, they wouldn't be so afraid." Prince Lien glanced at the 2 princes and said with a smile that was not a smile, "You two, well done. You actually colluded with outsiders to deal with your own brother. As expected of royalty." The contempt and sarcasm in his words were clear as day. After saying that, he ignored the 2 princes and hurriedly checked on the 5th prince's injuries. He frowned when he saw that the 5th prince was seriously injured and unconscious with poison surging in his body. "What a vicious method." Prince Lien muttered with a grim expression. He took out a jade-green divine pill and catalyzed it with his divine power. Swoosh. The divine pill turned into a dark green stream of air and entered the 5th prince's body. Soon, the power of the pill formed a protective layer that protected the fifth prince's heart and godhead. The fifth prince was finally out of danger and his life was no longer in danger. At the same time, the dark green medicinal power swam in his body and kept devouring the poison. The fifth prince's symptoms eased a little and he slowly woke up. He saw Prince Lian the moment he opened his eyes. He hurriedly propped up his heavily injured body and bowed. "Greetings, Prince Lian. I'm sorry that my plan failed and disappointed you." The fifth prince's attitude was very respectful, but there was also a trace of fear and worry. No one knew what he was afraid of and worried about. Prince Lian calmly raised his hand and patted him on the shoulder. "Don't worry, it's just a small loss. Don't worry about it. Moreover, the other party had 3 forces working together. You didn't lose unjustly. However, you have to learn from this lesson. There was no perfect conspiracy or plan in this world. One had to make corresponding adjustments and changes according to the situation in order to be invincible. Most importantly, only when one is strong enough can one ignore all schemes and schemes." The fifth prince listened carefully and pretended to be humble. He bowed and said, "Thank you for your advice, Prince Lian. I will remember it." "Alright, you should go back and treat your injuries." Prince Lian waved his hand and turned to leave. However, the fifth prince was unwilling to give up. He subconsciously said, "But," Prince Lian turned to look at him and said expressionlessly, "What? Are you still not satisfied? You want me to kill that brat?" The fifth prince remained silent, tacitly agreeing with this idea. However, he knew that he was being rude and hurriedly apologized. "I was thinking too much. Please forgive me, Prince Lian." Prince Lian said indifferently, "You have to remember that when you have no trump cards but still refuse to give up and fight like a cornered beast, you have already lost." His meaning was clear and everyone present understood. Although Prince Lian was here, he only brought 5 high-level divine lords with him. 2 of the divine lords were heavily injured and poisoned. They did not have much fighting strength. Even if Prince Lian personally attacked, it would be difficult to kill Zhi Tianxing. After all, Zhi Tianxing had 7 high-level divine lords, 2 imperial army commanders, and more than 40 imperial army soldiers. Prince Lian's side had no chance of winning. If they really fought, the fifth prince would definitely die. 4 of the 5 divine lords would also die. Only that purple-robed elder could cover Prince Lian's escape. Therefore Prince Lian would definitely not do such a stupid thing. Before leaving, Prince Lian took a deep look at Zhi Tianxing. His eyes were deep and cold as he said in a playful tone, "Young man, there will be plenty of time in the future. You must live well. Don't die in the hands of others. I will be very disappointed." In other words, he was determined to take Zhi Tianxing's life. Zhi Tianxing looked at him expressionlessly and said, "No matter who wants to kill me, they will all die under my sword in the end. There are no exceptions." Hearing this, Grand Prince Lian's pupils constricted, and a cold killing intent flashed in his eyes. The second prince looked at Zhi Tianxing with interest and admiration. Only the third prince's expression changed slightly. He was filled with anxiety as he shook his head and sighed. Soon Prince Lian left with the fifth prince and the rest, disappearing into the horizon. The ruins within a radius of 150 miles became silent. The third prince waved his hand and ordered 10 imperial army soldiers to clean up the battlefield and collect the spoils. The second prince brought Yanlong and the rest to Zhi Tianxing and bowed before leaving. "Young Master Tianxing, now that the truth is out, I am cleared of suspicion. Fortunately, your daughter was successfully rescued and you are safe and sound. This prince is relieved." Zhi Tianxing nodded slightly and cupped his hands. "Thank you, second prince, for coming to help. I will remember this favor and will repay it in the future." The second prince smiled with satisfaction and felt that this trip was worthwhile. He nodded and said, "Young Master Tianxing, I admire you for being able to distinguish between kindness and hatred. Let's not talk too much. I have to return to Monarch City to deal with some matters, so I will leave first. By the way, you must be careful in the next few days. Watch out for Prince Lian." With that, he flew into the sky with the 4 monarchs and returned to Monarch City. The third prince stood side by side with Zhi Tianxing and watched the second prince leave. He sighed with a bitter smile. "Young Master Tianxing, you already have a death feud with Little Five. Why do you have to provoke Prince Lian? I understand that you don't want to lose your momentum and limelight. That's why you said those words to Prince Lian. However, those words are meaningless. In the end, you still have to submit to him. Ji Tianxing frowned and asked, "What's wrong? Is Prince Lian very powerful? So powerful that you're afraid of him?" These words hurt the third prince's pride. However, the third prince was not angry. He nodded without hesitation and said, "That's right. His power and status are on a completely different level from ours. Even father wouldn't dare to offend him, let alone second brother and I. He's the top nobles, the true prodigy." "Since you said so, I understand." Ji Tianxing nodded and smiled mockingly. "That Prince Lian should be a member of the Great Yan Empire's imperial family, right? He might even be a cousin of the current Great Yan Emperor." Chapter 30. That's right. The third prince nodded and said solemnly, "The old emperor of the Great Yan Empire passed away 10 years ago. The cause of his death is unknown. He had 8 princes and 12 princesses. The old emperor was in his prime and had been at the peak of the Divine Lord realm for many years. He had been looking for an opportunity to break through to the Divine King realm. However, he didn't appoint a crown prince and suddenly passed away outside the empire. Even his corpse has not been found. This caused the Great Yan Empire to fall into chaos for half a year after his death. During this period, the princes fought for power and wealth to inherit the throne. Among them, the 2 most powerful princes were the eldest prince and the 4th prince. The eldest prince was the eldest son and his mother was the empress. It was only logical that he should inherit the throne. Moreover, the imperial family members and elders supported him. However, the 4th prince argued that the eldest prince had something to do with the death of the old emperor and that the eldest prince had ulterior motives. He swore to seize the throne and investigate the cause of the old emperor's death to give the people an explanation. The 4th prince was very powerful and had won the support of the other princes, princesses, and officials. Moreover, he had recruited many top forces and was very powerful. When he heard this, Ji Tianxing frowned and asked, "Then the 4th prince failed? He's Grand Prince Lian?" "No." The 3rd prince shook his head and explained, "The 4th prince did fail, but he was killed by the eldest prince's heaven-shaking divine sword outside the palace. Too many things happened during the fight between the 2 princes. Too many forces were involved and the process was very complicated. It can't be explained in a few words. But in the end, the 1st prince won and rightfully inherited the throne, becoming the new emperor. The 4th prince was killed and the 3 princes and 5 princesses who supported him as well as a large number of court officials were captured. Those people were either severely punished, imprisoned in the imperial city, or exiled to various divine kingdoms." Ji Tianxing nodded and asked, "So Grand Prince Lian was one of the 3 princes who supported the 4th prince?" "No." The 3rd prince shook his head again. Ji Tianxing frowned and said unhappily, "Can you stop keeping me in suspense and tell me everything at once?" The 3rd prince was a little embarrassed, so he explained straightforwardly, "Prince Lian is the 8th prince. He didn't participate in the fight for the throne. Before that incident, he had always been obsessed with the cultivation of the divine Dao and was determined to break through to the divine king realm. He wasn't interested in politics, power, or the throne, and he was only immersed in cultivation and pursued the peak of the divine Dao that was eternal and indestructible. Among the 8 princes, he was the most talented and the most favored by the old emperor. Many people even speculated that if he helped the 4th prince fight for the throne, he would most likely succeed." Ji Tianxing was even more confused and asked, "Since Grand Prince Lian is a martial maniac and didn't participate in the struggle for the throne, why was he exiled to blood-flame divine country?" The 3rd prince was silent for a moment before replying, "Because he and the 4th prince are of the same mother. Even though he didn't participate in the fight for the throne, the 4th prince and their mother almost killed the 1st prince and took the throne. After the 1st prince fought for the throne, he killed the 4th prince and their mother. He also executed the entire 4th prince residence, killing more than 3,000 people. So that's how it is." Only then did Ji Tianxing come to a realization. No wonder Prince Lian didn't do anything and was punished. The 3rd prince continued, "After the 1st prince ascended the throne, Prince Lian acted very indifferent, as if he didn't care about the death of his brother and mother. Moreover, he was still immersed in cultivation and didn't show any signs of rebellion. Because of this incident, countless people in the imperial capital talked behind his back, saying that Prince Lian was an emotionless, cold-blooded animal. They really felt sorry for the 4th prince and his mother. But Prince Lian didn't move as usual." Ji Tianxing continued, but the more he acted like this, the more the first prince feared him. The first prince was also worried that if Prince Lien broke through to the Divine King realm, his death would come. That's right. The third prince nodded in agreement and said, therefore after the first prince ascended the throne, he punished those traitors and Prince Lien. He gave the eighth prince the title of Prince Lien and rewarded him with tens of billions of resources to comfort him. He sent him to the Bloodfire Divine Kingdom as the overseer. The eighth prince's residence was kept, but all the servants, guards and hangers-on were dismissed. When Prince Lien came to the Bloodfire Divine Kingdom, he only brought 2 servants, one old and one young, with him. It was miserable. Ji Tianxing said calmly, the first prince did this to keep Prince Lien away from the Great Yan Empire, away from the center of power, so that he wouldn't have a chance to stir up trouble. Moreover, he removed his subordinates and made him an idle prince in the Bloodfire Divine Kingdom. In this way, Prince Lien wouldn't be a threat to the first prince's throne. However, Prince Lien wasn't the kind of person who would take it lying down. I guess Prince Lien has been recruiting and scheming in the dark ever since he came to the Bloodfire Divine Kingdom. He probably wants to kill his way back to the Great Yan Empire to avenge his mother and brother. The third prince frowned and thought for a while. He nodded and said, maybe. However, this kind of thing is better left unsaid. Who would dare to discuss it openly? After Prince Lien came to the Bloodfire Divine Kingdom, he built his residence into an impregnable fortress in just 3 years. Not only did he recruit thousands of guards, but he also recruited 300 diners and people with special abilities. Moreover, the fourth prince's old subordinates, including those top martial arts forces, have quietly joined him. Now he has formed an alliance with the fifth prince. I guess he has some ulterior motives. I don't know what method he used to make father make the fifth prince the crown prince. This matter definitely has something to do with Prince Lien. Ji Tianxing nodded and asked, you just said that the fourth prince's old subordinates and those martial arts forces have all joined Prince Lien's faction? Does the Heavenly Union sect include those powerful martial arts forces? The third prince nodded and said, yes. The Heavenly Union sect is one of the top 10 sects in the Great Yan Empire. However, after the Inheritance War 10 years ago, the Heavenly Union sect sacrificed a lot to help the fourth prince. Now the Heavenly Union sect is much weaker than before. However, the Heavenly Union sect isn't the only sect that has joined Prince Lien. Based on our observations over the past 10 years, I'm afraid there's another top sect and several second-rate sections. In short, Prince Lien doesn't want to reveal himself because he doesn't want to attract the Great Yan Emperor's attention. However, he's been accumulating forces in secret and has long grown to a shocking extent. Now that he's interfering with father's crown prince selection, it must be part of his plan. Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and muttered to himself, a 9th-level divine lord, the prince with the most talent and potential. Moreover, he's gathered a large number of experts and recruited 2 top sections. He's a formidable opponent. Chapter 30-31. Hearing Ji Tianxing's words, the third prince smiled bitterly. Young Master Tianxing, I've told you so much. Do you still not understand? Prince Lien's identity, status and influence far surpass ours. We're no match for him. Why should we throw an egg at a rock and seek our own destruction? Ji Tianxing glanced at him and said indifferently, even if we don't want to be enemies with him, we've already formed a deep grudge. Will he let us go? Of course, the person he wants to kill is me. You don't have to worry. At least you're the third prince of Blood Flame Divine Kingdom. As long as you don't form a death grudge with him, he won't make things difficult for you. The third prince was stunned. He said awkwardly, although that's true, we're allies. Since we're helping each other, how can I let you fight alone? How can I watch you fight to the death with Prince Lien? Ji Tianxing shook his head and said indifferently, Third Prince, you have too many ties and concerns. You'll never be able to settle grudges as quickly as I can. So, I appreciate your kindness, but you don't have to worry about this matter. But you... The third prince saw that he was stubborn and wanted to persuade him. But Ji Tianxing waved his hand and interrupted him. Coincidentally, the 10 Imperial Guards had also finished cleaning up the battlefield and brought back a large pile of spoils. There were over 100 divine weapons and equipment. There were swords, spears, halberds, armor, pill furnaces and so on. There were also many interspatial rings that contained large amounts of godstones and resources. Occasionally there were some rare treasures. In addition, There were over 600 pieces of godhead fragments scattered around the ruins. Ji Tianxing didn't want any of those divine weapons and cultivation resources. He only took the 600 pieces of godhead fragments. To the third prince, those godhead fragments weren't of much use. Divine weapons and equipment as well as spatial rings filled with cultivation resources were more practical. So the two of them split the spoils and left the battlefield. They returned to Royal City. 4 hours later, Ji Tianxing, the third prince, and the others returned to Royal City. It was already afternoon. Royal City was very lively. Countless citizens and divine race members flooded the streets and rushed to the square in the center of the city. Because the divine blood ceremony would be held tomorrow. The commoners and the Protoss had all rushed over in advance to take up space. The square in the center of the city had a radius of 30 miles. Even if the sky and the ground were filled with people, it could only accommodate 1 million people at most. However, there were millions of people in the royal city. In addition to the Protoss who had rushed over from all over the country, there were millions more. If he went to the square to watch the battle tomorrow, there would definitely be no seats available. He barely managed to find a place to stay, but it was also at the edge of the square. If they were too far away, they wouldn't be able to enjoy the exciting battle. Moreover, at the end of the divine blood ceremony, the royal family would pluck a branch from the blood flame sacred tree. The tree branches would turn into a rain of blood that would cover the sky and cover the sun, scattering all over the square. The closer one was, the more blood fire divine chi they would be able to absorb. It would be of great help in modifying one's bloodline and improving one's talent and comprehension. After understanding this point, Ji Tianxing no longer found it strange. The third prince sent him back to Changfeng Courtyard and returned to the palace. When Ji Tianxing returned to the Changfeng Courtyard, the house that was destroyed last night had already been repaired by the craftsmen. Although that incident had happened last night, the main culprit, the fifth prince, had already received a terrible punishment. Not only had he been heavily injured, both his legs had been crushed to pieces, and his body had been poisoned. For the time being, the fifth prince could only go into seclusion to heal his wounds and would not be able to come out to harm others. As for the second prince, he had made it clear that he wanted to cooperate with the third prince and would not harm Ji Tianxing. Thus the Changfeng Courtyard was very safe. After returning to his residence, Ji Tianxing entered the secret room alone and did not allow anyone to disturb him. He took out the Jiutian 10 Absolutes Tower and placed it on the stone table in front of him. Then he entered the 5th floor of the Divine Tower to visit his daughter, Wuxia. Whoosh! With a flash of divine light he appeared in the Origin Divine Formation. He looked around but did not see Wuxia's figure. When I rescued Wuxia, she was clearly on the altar. How come she's gone? Ji Tianxing was puzzled. Wuxia was still bound by the fifth prince's divine rope and could not use her divine power. Logically speaking, she could not have untied the divine rope and left the Origin Divine Formation. Thus, Ji Tianxing entered the 6th floor of the distorted spacetime. After flying for a while in the distorted spacetime, he found Wuxia. Wuxia was sitting on the frigid ice jade bed with his eyes closed. The divine rope on her body had been broken into several pieces and was thrown to the side. Jiku was beside her, observing her situation. Seeing this, Ji Tianxing guessed the reason and secretly heaved a sigh of relief. "Big brother Tianxing, you're finally here." Jiku saw him and hurriedly greeted him. Ji Tianxing came to the bed and looked at Wuxia. Seeing that she was fine, he asked, "Cuckoo, did you save Wuxia?" Jiku nodded and said, "Yes, I sensed through the divine tower that Wuxia was in the Origin Divine Formation and was sealed by a divine weapon. I rushed to the altar to save Wuxia. Wuxia told me that she was kidnapped by the second prince. The second prince used her as a hostage and set up an ambush to force you to die. I guess that since you dared to go, you must have made preparations and plans, so there shouldn't be a problem. Thus, I helped Wuxia untie the divine rope without discussing with you so as not to disturb you." Ji Tianxing was surprised and asked, "The divine rope tied to Wuxia is a high-grade monarch-grade divine weapon. Even if I wanted to untie it, it would take a lot of effort. How did you untie the divine rope and cut it apart?" Jiku pointed above and smiled. "Of course, I borrowed the power of the divine tower." Ji Tianxing came to a realization and did not ask anymore. Most of the time he was the one using the divine tower and it seemed to be his divine weapon. But in reality, Jiku was the true master of this divine tower. After all, she had inherited the divine Tao inheritance of the divine bird phoenix and cultivated the 9 revolution undying art. This 9 heavens 10 absolutes tower had also become one with her and was connected by blood. Ji Tianxing Wushuang and the others still needed to cultivate the divine power of the phoenix's nest before they could return to the divine tower from afar. Jiku on the other hand did not need to. He could enter and leave at will with just a thought. At this moment Jiku asked again, "Big brother Tianxing, is the crisis over? You successfully escaped from the encirclement?" Ji Tianxing nodded and said, "Yes, I asked the 3rd prince and the imperial guards to set up an ambush on the 3rd level of the divine tower. Later the 2nd prince also brought people to help. We worked together to kill the 5th prince's lackeys. The 5th prince was also severely injured by me and was poisoned. Unfortunately, when I was about to kill him, Grand Prince Lian came to save him." Jiku looked regretful and asked who Grand Prince Lian was. Ji Tianxing could only give her a brief introduction of Grand Prince Lian's background. After listening, Jiku said worriedly, "The strong enemy of the Bloodfire Divine Kingdom has not been dealt with yet, and now Grand Prince Lian of the Great Yan Empire is involved. You have to be more careful in the future." Chapter 30-32. Ji Tianxing nodded to show that he understood and advised Jiku not to worry too much. Counter soldiers with arms, water with an earth weir. There would always be a way. Jiku did not say anything else and said with a smile, "Big brother Tianxing, I have good news for you." Ji Tianxing revealed an expectant expression. "What good news?" Jiku smiled and said, "Previously you helped us solve our cultivation bottlenecks. My and eldest senior sister's cultivation has been much smoother. Now she's breaking through to the Divine Lord realm and will succeed soon. My strength is also progressing smoothly and I'll be able to break through soon." If Wushuang's appearance had not interrupted her closed-door cultivation, she would have been able to break through even faster. Ji Tianxing said with relief, "That's great. When you break through to the Divine Lord realm, you can follow me and we can move together." Jiku quickly nodded, his eyes revealing a look of anticipation. At this moment, Ji Wushuang finished adjusting her breathing and opened her eyes. Seeing that Ji Tianxing had returned safe and sound, a look of joy appeared on her face. "Father, you've finally returned safely. That's great. The 2nd prince, that treacherous fellow, actually ambushed so many experts. I've been worried about you." Ji Tianxing took her little hand and patted her head, comforting her. "Don't worry, isn't father fine? Also, when has father ever done something that he's not confident in?" Ji Wushuang heaved a sigh of relief and her hanging heart settled back into her stomach. After calming down, her eyes were a little dim. She lowered her head and said with a voice full of self-blame, "Father, this is all my fault. Wushuang knows her mistake. If I hadn't left the Divine Pagoda to see what the Divine Realm was like, this storm wouldn't have happened and you wouldn't have been in danger. I don't want to see the Divine Realm anymore. The Divine Spirits here are no different from the people in the mortal world. They're all selfish, treacherous, and despicable. I'm too weak and can't protect myself. I'll only cause trouble for father. Therefore I want to stay in the Divine Pagoda and work hard to cultivate and become stronger." In the past, Ji Wushuang had never seen the Divine Realm before and her heart was filled with longing and anticipation. The heavenly realm sounded very grand and lofty. It should be one of those illusory, immortal, and otherworldly paradises, right? However, after seeing it with her own eyes, she realized that this place was no different from the mortal world. It was just that the world was bigger and the people and gods were stronger. It was still full of intrigue, deceit, and murder. With her strength, not only would she not be able to help Ji Tianxing, she would also become a burden. She was disheartened and only wanted to cultivate and become stronger. Ji Tianxing smiled gently as he held her small hand and comforted her. "Shuang, you don't have to blame yourself. This isn't your fault at all." He could only blame those people for being too sinister and despicable. However, you can't treat all gods as villains. Among the gods you've met before, there are some good people. Ji Wushuang hurriedly nodded in agreement and said, "And that's right. At least that sister from Zhenhong was very kind. She almost lost her life trying to protect me. Father, I still have to go out and visit my sister in Zhenhong with you. I want to thank her in person and think of a way to help her heal. After settling her down, I'll return to the Divine Pagoda to heal. Is that okay?" Ji Tianxing nodded in agreement. "Of course. She was injured trying to protect you, so you have to thank her in person. As for healing her, father has already made preparations. You don't have to worry. Preparations? Ji Wuxuang revealed a puzzled expression and asked, Father, did you already guess that she would be seriously injured? That's not it. Ji Tianxing couldn't help but smile and said, Father has already seen that she is very special. She is a pearl covered in dust. Previously, I wanted to find an opportunity to give her some advice. Now that she is seriously injured, I will take this opportunity to give her an opportunity that will definitely benefit her immensely. Really? That's great. Ji Wuxuang found it hard to believe and said happily, This is all so good. You can help her and return the favor. Only then can I feel at ease. And you rest for a while first. Father still has some things to take care of. Ji Tianxing pinched her little face and said with a smile, When father is done, I will bring you to visit her. Okay. Ji Wuxuang hurriedly nodded in agreement and continued to revolve and cultivate. Following that, Ji Ku went into seclusion to cultivate and assault the Divine Lord realm. Ji Tianxing also took out a large pile of divine spark fragments and started devouring and refining them. The divine spark fragments that the Imperial Guards found in the ruins of West Wind Town were basically all Divine Lord powerhouses. After all, close to 100 low-level Divine Lords and quite a few high-level Divine Lords were all killed on the spot. Even a dozen low-level Divine Lord-level Imperial Guards were also killed. Those divine spark fragments were scattered in the ruins and mixed together. It was very difficult to distinguish clearly. When the Imperial Guards cleaned up the battlefield, they only found over 600 fragments, which was already considered very little. Although these fragments were all low-level Divine Lord level, there were enough of them. However, there were enough of them, so Ji Tianxing didn't mind. He cast the Devouring Divine ability and swiftly devoured those divine spark fragments, absorbing the power inside and stripping away the divine Dao laws inside. Inside each divine spark fragment contained 3 to 5 kinds of divine Dao laws. Ji Tianxing screened them continuously, eliminating the laws that he already grasped and also eliminating those low-level and useless laws. This way, the divine Dao laws that were suitable for him to refine were few and far between. Time passed by quietly. Unknowingly, 12 days passed in the distorted space-time. Ji Tianxing had devoured all 600 pieces of the quintessence fragments. Half of the power went to the heaven-mending pearl, and the other half of the divine power went to him. This caused his power to skyrocket, reaching the peak of the 3rd degree realm. Just a step away from being able to break through to the 4th degree realm and become a middle-level Divine Lord. In addition, he even stripped away 25 kinds of divine Dao laws from those divine spark fragments. Adding in his original 190 laws, the number of laws that he grasped reached as many as 215. This was a very terrifying number. Surveying the entire Bloodfire Divine Kingdom. No, it should be within the entire Great Yan Empire. There probably wasn't a second person who possessed so many divine Dao laws. Even the Great Yan Empire's old emperor, that peak Divine Lord powerhouse, also couldn't possibly grasp so many laws. Only Divine King realm powerhouses could achieve it. At the same time that Ji Tianxing's strength skyrocketed, the divine power that he expended previously was replenished. Some of his injuries also naturally healed. He reached an even more powerful peak state and ended his cultivation. Waking up Ji Wuxuang, who was still cultivating, the father and daughter pair left the divine tower and returned to the secret chamber. Although he was in close seclusion in the distorted spacetime for 12 days. But only 6 hours had passed in the outside world. It was the dead of the night. Ji Tianxing brought Ji Wuxuang out of the secret chamber and rushed to Zhen Hong's residence. Previously, Zhen Hong was seriously injured and unconscious. Ji Tianxing used the life-saving divine light and healed 80% of her injuries. She was already fine now. It was just that there were still many hidden injuries that needed to recuperate for a period of time before she could recover. In the morning, she entered the secret chamber to recuperate. But she sat there for the majority of the day and was ultimately unable to calm her heart to recuperate. Her heart was uneasy and kept thinking about Ji Tianxing and Wuxuang's safety. Feng Yun Reading Network. Chapter 30-33. Zhen Hong had been in the secret chamber the whole time and had not come out. Therefore she did not know the result. When the maid outside the secret chamber reported that Ji Tianxing and Wuxuang had come to visit her, she was stunned on the spot. After coming back to her senses, she let out a long sigh of relief and smiled happily. When Ji Tianxing and Wuxuang entered the secret chamber, She quickly got up to greet them. She looked at Wuxia up and down several times. When she saw that she was safe and sound, she said with red eyes, "Miss Wuxia, it's great that you're okay. I've been worried all day. Fortunately, you've returned safely." Ji Tianxing could see that Zhen Hong's injury was not improving, so he guessed that she was not lying. Ji Wuxia bowed to her and thanked her sincerely. Zhen Hong quickly supported her and said with some fear, "Young mistress, please get up. Zhen Hong can't accept such a big gift. Moreover, Zhen Hong failed to protect you. It's already a great kindness for young Master Tianxing to not blame me." Both sides exchanged a few words. After Wuxia thanked him in person, Ji Tianxing asked her to return to the Divine Tower and go into seclusion to distort the space-time. The secret chamber quieted down. Only Ji Tianxing and Zhen Hong were left. At this time, Ji Tianxing began to talk about business. "Miss Zhen Hong, your injury has not healed. This time, not only Wuxia wants to thank you in person, but I also want to help you heal." Zhen Hong was stunned for a moment and was quite moved. She quickly waved her hand and said, "Young Master Tianxing, I don't dare to trouble you anymore. Previously, you used that holy divine light to heal 80% of my injury. You really don't have to trouble yourself anymore." She was moved and lowered her head shyly, not daring to look at Ji Tianxing's face. For some reason, when she was alone with Ji Tianxing in the secret chamber, her heart would beat faster. Ji Tianxing said seriously, "Actually, it's not just about treating your injuries. It's also about your background." Family background? Zhen Hong was stunned for a moment. He raised his head in confusion and stared at Ji Tianxing. "Young Master Tianxing, what do you mean?" Ji Tianxing didn't answer. He asked, "Do you remember what happened when you were young? Where did you grow up? What do your parents look like?" Zhen Hong was a little surprised and asked awkwardly, "Mr. Tianxing, why did you suddenly ask this? Did His Majesty tell you?" Ji Tianxing shook his head and said, "No, it has nothing to do with the third prince. I never asked her about you." Only then did Zhen Hong feel relieved. After seriously recalling for a moment, he said, "Before I was 12 years old, I had been living at the border of a neighboring country. It was a small village in the middle of the mountains. The village was surrounded by mountains on all sides and was very remote. There were only about 200 people in the village and everyone was very harmonious and close. For as long as I could remember, I had never seen my mother. It was always my father who brought me up. When my father was young, he was seriously injured and couldn't cultivate anymore. His body was very weak. He couldn't go to the jungle to hunt spirit beasts and divine beasts like other people. He also couldn't go to the workshop to work. It was almost impossible for him to live alone. Fortunately, the neighbors helped me and my father to live peacefully for so many years. Many times I asked my father where my mother was. My father always lowered his head silently, as if he didn't want to talk about the past. I asked many times, but he only replied that my mother was very far away and couldn't be with us. When I was 12 years old, a group of strange and vicious people broke into our village. They were extremely vicious and evil. They killed all the people in the village and set the whole village on fire. My father was caught by them and was tortured. They forced my father to tell them some secrets. But my father didn't say anything and was tortured to death. Later they caught me again and prepared to take me away. It was at that time that Master appeared. He had just returned from a neighboring country with a large number of guards and soldiers. He saved me on the way." Hearing this, Ji Tianxing nodded and said, "In that case, your father is an ordinary Protoss. The problem lies with your mother." Zhen Hong frowned and asked, "Young Master Tianxing, what happened to my mother? What's the problem?" Ji Tianxing stared at her and said solemnly, "Your mother is not an ordinary Protoss. She has a noble bloodline." "Ah." Zhen Hong was shocked and in disbelief. "How is that possible? My father has never mentioned it to me." Ji Tianxing continued, "According to my speculation, your mother should be a dragon god." "Dragon god?" Zhen Hong's expression was even more stunned. She was a little dizzy from the shock of this sudden news. Ji Tianxing nodded and said, "That's right. She is the descendant of a divine dragon and a Protoss. The bloodline of the dragon gods is noble and powerful. They have the powerful physique and bloodline of the dragons and the cultivation talent and potential of the Protoss. Every dragon god has an 80% chance of becoming a divine lord. For every 100 dragon gods, there's a possibility of one divine king realm powerhouse appearing." Zhen Hong was completely shocked and exclaimed in disbelief, How is this possible? There is such a powerful race in the world. Of course. Ji Tianqing nodded affirmatively and said, after all, the bloodline of the dragon gods is a combination of the characteristics of the dragons and the Protoss. It should be quasi-king level. In this world, the dragon gods should be ranked in the top 100 bloodlines. In order to maintain the purity and strength of their bloodline, the dragon gods have formulated an ancient rule that the dragon gods can only mate with other dragon gods. Once they mate with other races, not only will the dragon gods' bloodline weaken, but they will also be severely punished by the dragon gods. Including the partner of the union and the children born, they will all be executed. Because the dragon gods think that it is blasphemy against them. Zhenhong was stunned for a long time before she murmured in a low voice, no wonder father was so infatuated and in love with mother, but never resented her for abandoning us and leaving. An ordinary Protoss and a noble dragon god. There must have been an unforgettable relationship between the two of them. But due to the ancestral teachings of the dragon gods and to protect father and me, mother had to leave, right? Zhenhong had a complicated look in her eyes as she murmured sadly. Her eyes were full of tears. After a long while she collected her thoughts and bowed deeply to Ji Tianqing. Young Master Tianqing, thank you for clearing my doubts and letting me understand my background. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said, your dragon god bloodline has been diluted. You are not as monstrous and powerful as the pure-blooded dragon gods. Therefore the dragon god bloodline does not have much impact on your appearance and body shape. But this also causes your body shape to be very different from that of ordinary Protoss women. At the same time, your talent and aptitude are also a bit stronger than ordinary Protoss. Zhenhong came to a realization and said with a wry smile, I used to think that I was an anomaly among the Protoss, a freak. Because of this I felt very inferior. Ji Tianqing smiled and said, no need to feel inferior. Your dragon god bloodline has not awakened yet. When I help you awaken your bloodline and evolve into the appearance of the dragon gods, the ones who should feel inferior are those Protoss women. Chapter 30-34. Awaken my bloodline? Zhenhong's eyes widened as she looked at Ji Tianqing in shock. Young master, can you help me awaken my dragon god bloodline? Of course. Ji Tianqing smiled and nodded. This is not difficult for me. He did not say the rest of his words. After all, he had a real divine dragon by his side. There was also a half-dragon half-god guy. This sudden huge surprise made Zhenhong a little flustered, and her pretty face blushed a little. Young master, how can you help me awaken my bloodline? Ji Tianqing pointed to the purple jade bed in the corner of the secret room. Suddenly Zhenhong's pretty face became even hotter and she lowered her head shyly. Even the base of her neck was red. She hesitated for a moment before she got up, walked to the purple jade bed and slowly lay down. Ji Tianqing frowned and he did not know whether to laugh or cry. Why are you lying down? Meditate and activate your bloodline. Huh. Zhenhong realized that she had misunderstood and was immediately embarrassed. She hurriedly got up and sat cross-legged on the jade bed, closed her eyes and began to activate her divine power. Ji Tianqing did not say anything else and used his divine sense to communicate with the black dragon. Little black, lend me a drop of dragon blood. The black dragon was cultivating in seclusion when it suddenly heard this sentence, and its body trembled. Ji, what do you want to do? It instinctively had a premonition that something bad was going to happen. Ji Tianqing explained, don't be nervous, I only need a drop of dragon blood as a primer to activate Zhenhong's dragon god bloodline. You really only need a drop of blood? The black dragon relaxed and hurriedly activated its cultivation to force out a drop of dragon blood. Whoosh! A drop of pure black dragon blood the size of an egg flew out of the divine pagoda and landed in Ji Tianqing's palm. This drop of dragon blood was crystal clear like a black gemstone. It shone with 7-colored divine light and emitted a powerful dragon aura. Ji Tianqing glanced at Zhenhong and saw that she was still channeling her energy. Her bloodline had not been fully stimulated. Therefore he sent out a burst of divine power from his left hand into Zhenhong's body to help her activate her bloodline power. Not long after, the blood in her body began to boil like a great river. Zhenhong's face also turned red. His skin swelled and his veins bulged. He looked even more majestic. Furthermore, the state of her blood boiling caused her to sweat all over and her body to tremble uncontrollably. For a girl, this state was not beautiful. However, she couldn't care less. She could only calm herself down and focus on maintaining the circulation of her bloodline. Zhenhong, I'll use a drop of dragon blood to completely awaken your dragon god bloodline. The process will be a little painful, but you must hold on. As long as you can get through this, you'll be reborn. Although this sounded quite dangerous, Zhenhong chose to believe him and nodded in agreement. Understood. Ji Tianxing no longer hesitated. He pointed at her forehead with his right hand and shot out the black dragon blood. Swoosh. The egg-sized drop of black dragon blood turned into a pitch-black stream of water and drilled into her forehead. It swam in her mind, then spread to her limbs and bones and quickly merged into her bloodline. Suddenly, her boiling and surging bloodline became even more violent, as if it had encountered a shocking hurricane. Rumble. The speed of her blood surging immediately increased by 5 times, making a low sound like muffled thunder. Not only did it speed up, but the power of her bloodline also increased by several times. As it rushed through her meridians and blood vessels, it even stirred up layers of huge waves and vortexes. Such violent power caused Zhenhong's body to swell as if it was filled with air. Bang! 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 With a series of muffled explosions, her body continued to grow taller and wider. Her skin also cracked and blood flowed out. Her meridians were widened and her bones grew rapidly, becoming wider and stronger. In just 100 breaths, she had grown 6 feet taller and 50% larger. The dragon god bloodline hidden deep in her bloodline was completely activated. Her appearance also underwent a huge change. She no longer looked like an ordinary god. She had indeed become a dragon god. She was 4.5 meters tall, slender and vigorous, and filled with explosive power. The cracked skin all over her body was healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Golden dragon scales gradually grew out from the areas where the blood was dripping. Her tailbone was also elongated, breaking through the constraints of her skin, and a dark golden dragon tail emerged. And the top of her head, a bone also broke out and quickly turned into a dragon horn. Although that pale golden bone was only the embryonic form of a dragon horn. But in the future, as her strength continued to increase, that dragon horn would also grow. At this moment, Zhenhong was indeed as Ji Tianxing had said. She had broken through the cocoon and become a butterfly, bathed in blood and reborn. However, the pain she suffered was also unimaginable to ordinary people. Her blood boiled, her meridians and flesh were torn, her bones expanded and grew, her appearance changed and reformed. This kind of pain was equivalent to piecing her back together after being torn apart. She trembled in pain, her face was distorted, and her body was covered in blood and cold sweat. Although her will was strong, she clenched her teeth and did not let out a scream. But from time to time, 1 or 2 painful muffled groans overflowed from her mouth and nose. Ji Tianxing was most worried that she would not be able to bear the pain during the awakening process and fall into a coma. That would be the failure of the awakening, and it would cause irreversible damage to her. Fortunately, she was strong enough and had a strong will. She actually survived. After a full hour, her bloodline calmed down. The sudden changes in her appearance gradually stabilized. The pain like death by 1,000 cuts was also rapidly alleviating. The awakening was successful. Phew. Zhenhong let out a long sigh of relief, spat out a mouthful of blood, collapsed and panted violently. It was as if the near-death experience had almost exhausted her mental and physical strength. So much so that she did not notice that the clothes on her body had been torn apart and turned into a pile of rags. Most of the rags were stained with blood and scattered on the ground. It could not cover her incomparably slender, vigorous and perfect body after her evolution. Ji Tianxing witnessed the whole process, but he did not have a trace of distracting thoughts. He had been observing Zhenhong's situation. Seeing that her state was stable after the successful awakening, he warned, "You have successfully awakened the dragon god bloodline and become a dragon god warrior. But it is not over yet. The 5 hours after the awakening is the best time for you to lay the foundation of the divine Tao. Put on your clothes first, I will let the white dragon help you." After that, he took out a set of scarlet armor from the space ring and handed it to Zhenhong. This was a set of mid-grade monarch-level artifact, which could be enlarged or shrunk at will. It was as light as nothing when worn. Zhenhong did not care about her shyness. She used her power to clean up the blood and rags on her body, and quickly put on the scarlet armor. The slender and healthy body of the dragon goddess was immediately covered by the armor. But even so, it was difficult to hide her explosive curves and proud posture. She looked down at herself and whispered, "Young master really did not lie to me. This is the true form of the dragon god clan. Such a perfect body is enough to make all the women of the god clan envious and jealous." Chapter 30-35. Women. Ji Tianqing heaved a silent sigh. After all, Zhenhong's focus was a little strange. Ji Tianqing didn't say anything and contacted Bai Long in the divine tower with his divine sense. "Bai Long, it's time to work." Bai Long was also cultivating in the distorted spacetime and he was completely focused. Suddenly he heard Ji Tianqing's voice transmission, and he was immediately awakened. He quickly ended his cultivation and asked expectantly, "Master, is there a big battle again? Who are you going to kill this time?" Ji Tianqing said in a playful tone, "With your current strength I won't call you even if there is a big battle." Bai Long was a little embarrassed and asked with a smile, "Then what can I do for you, master?" Ji Tianqing said with a smile, "Do you still remember what I said to you before?" Bai Long thought for a moment and his expression suddenly changed. He asked with a wry smile, "You mean, extreme joy begets sorrow and it'll be fine if you don't cry when the time comes?" "That's right." Ji Tianqing's smile became even more mocking. "Ahem." Bai Long's expression changed and he said fawningly, "Master, I'm so obedient, sensible, filial and adorable. Cut the crap and come out." Ji Tianqing interrupted him simply and rudely. Bai Long left the divine tower and appeared in the secret chamber. Just as he was about to beg Ji Tianqing for mercy, he suddenly saw Zhenhong sitting on the jade bed in a crimson armor. He was stunned and a stunned expression appeared on his face. He couldn't help but exclaim, "Wow! Isn't this a female warrior of the dragon gods? Oh my god! Such an explosive and powerful figure, it's one in a million." Bai Long's eyes lit up and he asked subconsciously, "Master, where did you get such a superb dragon girl?" Ahem. Ji Tianqing pretended to cough twice and frowned as he glared at Bai Long. Zhenhong also frowned as she stared at Bai Long. Her eyes were filled with shame and anger. Ha ha. Bai Long regained his senses and scratched his head awkwardly. He quickly explained, "Miss, don't be angry. I didn't mean to offend you. I was really praising you for your beauty when I was babbling nonsense just now." As he spoke, he sized up Zhenhong from head to toe, unable to hide his amazement. "Miss, why do you look so familiar?" I remember now. You are from Zhenhong." Only then did White Dragon recognize that the awesome dragoness in front of him was Divine Lord Zhenhong. He glanced at Zhenhong then looked at Ji Tianqing. A playful smile appeared on his face as if he understood what was going on. Master and Miss Zhenhong are together alone in the secret room again. Just as his mind was filled with fanciful thoughts, Ji Tianqing said calmly, "Bai Long, Miss Zhenhong has just awakened her dragon god bloodline and has yet to establish the foundation of the divine path. I'll leave this matter to you. Finish it in 10 hours. Ah. Bai Long's face suddenly stiffened. He said with grievance, "So it's this matter. It's not your fault. Master, can we discuss it again?" "There's no room for discussion," Ji Tianqing said expressionlessly. "Weren't you laughing happily just now? Besides, you are also a half-dragon and half-god. You have the most experience. You are the most suitable person to handle this matter." Bai Long's expression was bitter. He frowned and thought for a moment. Suddenly he thought of something. He looked at Ji Tianqing and asked, "Master, are you planning to take Miss Zhenhong into your harem?" Ji Tianqing glared at him and said angrily, "Is Master that kind of person?" He. Bai Long continued to laugh. "Master, although you are loyal to the two mistresses, Miss Zhenhong also has feelings for you. She is deeply in love with you. It's a once-in-a-lifetime fate to have a top-grade dragon girl like Miss Zhenhong. How can you let her down?" Ji Tianqing asked with a smile. "Do you think that you won't lose out if you help her because I want to take her into my harem? Otherwise she's just a passerby. There's no need to make such a big sacrifice for her, right?" "Well, of course." Bai Long nodded without hesitation and said, "You also know that I have to use 90% of my divine power and soul power to help her establish the foundation of the divine path. I also have to use a lot of Dragon Clan's secret techniques. I will also be injured. After the matter is done, I will need to rest for at least a year to recover to my peak. We are not related to her. There's no reason for us to help her like this, right? Ji Tianxing was a little hesitant. He also felt that it was unfair to treat Bai Long like this. But he and Zhen Hong, there was no such thing. Zai. Master only helped her awaken her bloodline because she is pure and kind. She also risked her life to protect Shuang. There's no such messy thoughts at all. Bai Long nodded to show that he understood and said with a smirk, forget it. I will help her establish the foundation first. Although you don't like her now, feelings need to be cultivated slowly. You also need to communicate deeply. Love will only develop over time. Ji Tianxing guessed that he was driving, but he didn't have any evidence, so he didn't bother to argue with him. Then let's begin. Bai Long nodded and began to use his secret techniques to help Zhen Hong establish the foundation of the divine path. Zhen Hong didn't know her identity before and only cultivated as an ordinary god. Therefore, her divine power and foundation of the divine path were accumulated from the god clan's secret techniques. But now, she had awakened the dragon god's bloodline and become a dragon girl. Ordinary god clan's secret techniques were no longer suitable. Only by using the dragon clan's secret techniques as her foundation could she spread her wings and soar and go further in the future. Bai Long first used his secret techniques to comb her meridians, divine power and divine soul. After her condition stabilized, he taught her the Dragon Clan's secret techniques. This process was very complicated. There couldn't be the slightest mistake. It was like building a palace with bricks. Once there was a problem with the foundation, it was likely to cause the entire palace to tilt, crack and collapse. At the same time, he had to speed up and complete it within 10 hours. This made him have to go all out and consume divine power and soul power regardless of the cost. After all, he hadn't reached the Divine Lord realm yet, but Zhen Hong was a third-stage lower Divine Lord. This was also a great challenge for him. Time passed quietly. 6 hours passed quickly. Bai Long completed the first 2 steps and taught Zhen Hong 18 Dragon Clan's secret techniques. Next, he had to guide Zhen Hong to master the 18 Dragon Clan's secret techniques and condense them into the foundation of the divine path. Fortunately, Zhen Hong completely obeyed Ji Tianxing's instructions and cooperated with Bai Long to cast the secret techniques. Furthermore, her talent and comprehension ability were greatly improved, understanding with a little hint. In addition, there was still Ji Tianxing supervising the entire process, guiding by the side all along. That made the process very smooth. Unknowingly, another 4 hours passed. The 10-hour deadline was already up. After this, Zhen Hong's dragon god bloodline returned to silence. Wanting to establish a foundation and imprint the Dragon Clan's secret techniques again would be doubly difficult. Fortunately, Bai Long successfully completed the mission. Zhen Hong's divine path foundation was successfully condensed, and she broke through to the 4th-level Divine Lord realm as a matter of course. Chapter 30-36. Zhush. Zhen Hong sat cross-legged, closing both eyes to revolve and cultivate. Her entire body bloomed with soaring golden light, emitting sacred dragon aura undulations. Dazzling golden light boiled and surged, condensing into the scene of 9 golden dragons circling and dancing. Such a gorgeous scene was precisely the light and shadow of her divine Tao foundation condensing and breaking through to the 4th-level Divine Lord realm. She suppressed the surprise and excitement that filled her, trying her best to maintain calm, revolving and stabilizing her foundation and divine power. This breakthrough made her become a middle-level Divine Lord. Not only did her strength advance by leaps and bounds, her divine Tao also underwent a change. Successfully awakening the Dragon God bloodline, her divine Tao cultivation would be a smooth path in the future. Furthermore, how far she could walk on the path of divine Tao, what peak she could climb to, there were also limitless possibilities. A true nirvanic rebirth, shedding one's mortal body and exchanging one's bones. As for the white dragon, expended 90% of his divine power and soul force, and even paid with 18 dragon race ultimate arts. His complexion was already pale as paper, his entire body dripping with sweat, sprawled on the ground like a pile of mud, gasping for breath. I feel like my body has been hollowed out. Even if he was so tired, he also did not forget to be mischievous. He even blinked at Ji Tianxing and transmitted his voice weakly. Master, this disciple is filial enough, right? For your fortune, This disciple made such a great sacrifice. If you don't arrange a few beautiful little female dragons for this disciple in the future, it would be letting down this disciple's painstaking efforts. Ji Tianxing glared at him huffily. Shut up, you return to the divine pagoda and recuperate properly. Finished talking, he manipulated the 9 heavens 10 absolute pagoda and put the white dragon away into the distorted spacetime. Thinking for a while, he took out a large pile of monarch-rank divine pills and source stones and threw them beside the white dragon to express comfort and reward. After that, he quietly left the secret chamber. Zhenhong stayed in the secret chamber and continued to revolve and regulate his breathing, stabilizing his foundation. 4 hours later, the sun had risen. A new day had arrived. Ji Tianxing was currently resting in the room when the guard outside reported that the third prince came to visit. Hence, Ji Tianxing got up and headed to the study to meet the third prince. The two of them greeted each other and took their respective seats. The third prince smiled and said, Mr. Tianxing, the divine blood ceremony is about to begin. How are your preparations going? Ji Tianxing nodded and said, Of course, no problem. I can join the battle at any time. The third prince waved his hand and said with a chuckle, That won't be necessary. This year's divine blood ceremony will be organized by this prince. Today was the first day. There would be a grand ceremony and ceremony. It would take a long time before the arena competition would begin. Moreover, the arena competition on the first day was only to determine the top 30. This prince has already made arrangements for you. You don't need to participate in today's competition. You can directly enter the top 30. Tomorrow morning will be the time for you to show your prowess and suppress everyone. Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and said, Third prince, I have something to ask of you. If you have something to say, just say it. The third prince nodded without hesitation. Ji Tianxing asked, For those who want to participate in the Challenge Arena tournament, the registration ended yesterday, right? The third prince nodded and said, That's right. The registration condition is to reach the Divine Lord realm within 1,000 years of age. There are not many people who meet this condition, and all of them are famous geniuses. In the entire Divine Kingdom, there are no more than 500 people, right? As of yesterday evening, there were a total of 181 people who signed up. Ji Tianxing nodded and said, Can you do me a favor and add the name of Miss Zhenhong? The third prince suddenly frowned and said with a startled face, Miss Zhenhong also wants to participate in the arena competition? This is her idea or your decision? Ji Tianxing did not answer. He raised his eyebrows and asked, Is there a problem? The third prince spread his hands and said indifferently, Although Miss Zhenhong meets the registration conditions and can be considered a genius with outstanding talent. But in every arena competition, those geniuses who can enter the top 10 are all middle-level divine lords. Even if she participates, it is impossible for her to enter the top 10 and she will be seriously injured. This is meaningless and will affect the normal affairs of the Longwind courtyard. Ji Tianxing said with a chuckle, Just last night she broke through to the 4th stage and became a middle-level divine lord. The third prince was shocked and showed an expression of disbelief. How is this possible? Didn't she just get seriously injured and her injuries have not even healed? How did he manage to break through to 4th stage realm in just one night? Ji Tianxing was about to explain the whole story. At this time, the voice of the guard came from outside the door. Reporting to young Master Tianxing, Miss Zhenhong requests an audience. Ji Tianxing looked at the third prince and said with a smile, Since she is here, you should see for yourself. As his voice fell, Zhenhong, who was wearing a red armor, stepped into the study. When she stepped through the door of the study, she had to bend down to avoid hitting the door bar. After all, this door was designed for the divine race and was only 10 feet tall. And Zhenhong's height had reached 1.5 feet. When she entered the study, Ji Tianxing and the third prince who were sitting felt a sense of oppression. After all, not only was her body slender and tall, but her curves were also abnormally hot. Especially the proportion of her legs, which reached 60% of her body. Although her whole body was wrapped in red armor, only her shoulders were exposed. But her face was more beautiful, and her facial features had a kind of determined heroic spirit. Her temperament became more special and charming. Moreover, the short little golden dragon horn on her forehead looked a little silly and cute. The third prince was dumbfounded on the spot. He stared straight at Zhenhong and stood up with a bang. He was so shocked that he forgot himself. You are Miss Shenhong? The third prince pointed at her and asked in shock, stuttering a little. No matter how calm and experienced he was, he could not bear such a big shock. In just a short time Miss Shenhong had become like this? He found it hard to accept. Shenhong was also stunned for a moment before she bowed to him. Shenhong greets the Lord. Then she looked at Ji Tianqing and bowed deeply. She said sincerely, Shenhong will remember young master's kindness for giving me a new lease of life. I will never forget it. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and asked, Has your foundation been stabilized? Can you adapt? Shenhong quickly replied, Young master, don't worry. After 4 hours of recuperation I can control myself freely. The feeling of being reborn is really wonderful. Good. Ji Tianqing looked gratified and said, Just now I told the third prince to add your name to the list and participate in the divine blood ceremony. What do you think? Shenhong was stunned for a moment. Then she showed a grateful look and quickly nodded. Thank you for your support, young master. I will do as you say. Shenhong also wants to try and see how big the gap is between me and the top 10 geniuses. The third prince stared blankly at the two of them asking and answering questions. His expression was a little strange and he even felt that it was a little ridiculous. Why do they act like master and servant? It seems that Shenhong only has eyes for him and treats him as her master. This prince is clearly her master. Feng Yun Reading Network. Chapter 3037. For a long time, Shenhong had always obeyed orders. Her personality was simple, kind, courageous and determined. The third prince couldn't understand how Ji Tianqing could capture Shenhong's heart in just a few days. With Ji Tianqing present, he, the real master, seemed superfluous. So embarrassing. Could it be that Shenhong became like this and became a mid-level divine lord because of Ji Tianqing? Thinking of this, the third prince was even more shocked and felt that it was incredible. Young Master Tianqing, how did you do it? He stared at Ji Tianqing with a burning gaze, his eyes full of amazement. Ji Tianqing said with an indifferent expression, This is her original appearance, it's just that she hasn't awakened. What I did was just to give her a push and help her awaken sooner. Although he said it casually, the third prince was well aware of how miraculous this was. He saved Shenhong and devoted hundreds of years to cultivate her, but he didn't see the problem with Shenhong's bloodline. As a result, Ji Tianqing helped Shenhong awaken after only a few days. This was a real powerhouse. Awesome. After holding back for a long time, the third prince could only use these two words to describe Ji Tianqing. The noble prince who spoke elegantly actually said such vulgar words. One could imagine how big of an impact this matter had on him. After calming himself down, the third prince said expectantly, Since young master has helped Shenhong and given her such an opportunity, then she will definitely be able to soar to the sky in this competition. Let's go watch the ceremony together. This prince will add Shenhong's name and see how amazing her performance is. The three of them didn't delay any longer and hurriedly left the study and walked out. At the gate of Chongfeng Courtyard, the third prince's carriage was already waiting. 8 white-winged Pegasi pulled a large and luxurious carriage, accompanied by hundreds of people. The third prince, Ji Tianqing, Shenhong, and others boarded the carriage one by one and drove toward the city square. Along the way they passed through several wide streets, which were bustling with noise and excitement. There were people everywhere. Gods of all shapes and sizes were jostling shoulder to shoulder. Countless commoners and gods converged into a surging tide and surged toward the plaza in the center of the city. It was very difficult to travel on the road, so 8 Pegasus pulled the carriage into the sky. Not long after, the carriage arrived at the plaza in the middle of the city. As early as 2 days ago, the venue in the square had been set up. At this moment, the square with a radius of tens of miles was already packed with people. At a glance, it looked like an endless tide. The square was surrounded by empty space. Ordinary citizens and Protoss could only watch the ceremony from the ground. In the center of the square, there was an arena with a radius of 10 miles, enveloped by a sky-blue ball of light. Directly above the arena, there was a ceremonial platform with a radius of 3,000 feet. The decorations were sacred and solemn. There were hundreds of imperial guards guarding the ring and the ceremonial stage. Around the square, there were also tens of thousands of armored and sword-wielding guards standing there like statues. The presence of the imperial guards was like an invisible shackle, making everyone behave and not dare to cause trouble. Around the ceremonial stage there were 4 viewing platforms suspended in the air in the 4 directions of north, south, east and west. The viewing platforms were spacious and comfortable, and could accommodate tens of thousands of people. Only the relatives of the emperor, the upper-class nobles and famous experts were qualified to sit on the platforms to watch the ceremony. When the third prince's carriage arrived, there was a burst of cheers and discussion in the square. After all, the second prince and the third prince had been fighting for many years. Both of them had done everything they could to create a glorious image in the court and among the commoners. They had a large number of supporters. The carriage flew to the northern viewing platform and stopped. The third prince, Ji Tianxing, and the others walked out one by one. When they saw Ji Tianxing and Zhen Hong, countless commoners, protoss and nobles looked at them curiously. Most people did not recognize Ji Tianxing, nor did they recognize Zhen Hong, who had just completed his transformation. Everyone was puzzled. Who are these 2 people? Why were they with the third prince? Were they from the hidden nobles? Or were they disciples of the big sects or aristocratic families that did not show themselves? Or were they the top geniuses that the third prince had just recruited? After everyone was seated, the carriage left. This viewing platform was in the best position. It could overlook the entire square and see the ceremonial stage and the arena clearly. Only the relatives of the emperor and important officials of the country were qualified to sit there. The second prince and his subordinates had already taken their seats on the viewing platform. Over 100 people were seated around the second prince, and they were chatting in low voices. Seeing the third prince arrive, the second prince did not look at him. But he nodded at Ji Tianxing and greeted him in a subtle way. At this time the viewing platforms in the east, west and south were already full. There were not many seats left. The third prince first found the officiator in charge of the ceremony and quietly added Zhen Hong's name. Then, seeing that the time was almost up, he got up and flew to the ceremonial stage. The second prince, the princesses and the idle lords of the older generation followed him to the ceremonial stage. There were more than 20 people, all of whom were direct descendants of the Duanmu family. They were also the most distinguished members of the royal family. Everyone was dressed in splendid clothes. They looked dignified and solemn as they lined up on the ceremonial stage. Then, as the host of the ceremony, the third prince began to read the divine scripture and the imperial edict. This series of content was not only tedious and lengthy, but also difficult to understand. But the general meaning was nothing more than to describe the significance of the divine blood ceremony and let the people remember the deeds of the martyrs. Ji Tianxing listened absent-mindedly. His eyes swept across the many members of the royal family and found something interesting. The fifth prince did not attend today's ceremony. It seems that the boy's injuries are too serious and the poison has not been removed. Also, his legs were crippled by me. He looks too pathetic and is not suitable to attend such an occasion. Since that is the case, would the king still appoint a prince who has lost his power and his legs as the crown prince of the divine kingdom? As this thought flashed through his mind, Ji Tianxing's lips curled into a playful smile. He subconsciously turned his head and looked around. He saw a familiar face in the center of the eastern viewing platform. As always, he was wearing a black dragon robe with golden threads and a luxurious golden crown. His face was fair and handsome. It was Prince Lian. When he looked at Prince Lian also sensed his gaze and looked at him with a cold gaze. Their eyes met. Both of them had cold expressions and sharp gazes. The hostility and murderous intent in their eyes made the people around them feel cold and couldn't help but tremble. Zhen Hong was next to him. Sensing the abnormality, he looked at Prince Lian in confusion. He lowered his head and asked Ji Tianxing through telepathy, "Young master, what's wrong? Is that person your enemy?" Ji Tianxing looked away and nodded calmly. Zhen Hong pursed his lips and said firmly through telepathy, "Young master, please consider the overall situation and be patient for the time being. After the divine blood ceremony, Zhen Hong will definitely help you eliminate the enemy." Ji Tianxing showed a hint of surprise and asked with a chuckle, "Do you know who that person is?" "P.S. Readers, I am He Wuhan. I recommend a free app that supports downloading, listening to books, zero ads and multiple reading modes. Please follow. Book friends quickly follow." Chapter 3038. Zhen Hong shook her head. Obviously, with her identity and status, she could not come into contact with Prince Lian. Ji Tianxing smiled and comforted her. "Don't think too much. Just do your own thing." Zhenhong pursed her lips and did not say anything. She knew that she was still too weak to help young Master Tianxing. She silently made up her mind to live up to young Master Tianxing's expectations. She had to become a powerful high-level divine lord in the shortest time possible. She could not tarnish the reputation of the dragon gods. In the blink of an eye, an hour passed. After the third prince finished reading the divine Bible and the edict, he led the royal family members to kneel and kowtow to the spirits of their ancestors. After this series of tedious things were done, the royal family members left. Then the arena competition that the Million God clan members and commoners were looking forward to the most was finally about to begin. The second prince and the third prince stayed on the stage. The third prince announced with a solemn expression and a booming voice, "I will be the host of this year's divine blood ceremony. Second brother and everyone will supervise the entire process. Now I announce the start of the arena competition. A total of 182 young elites have signed up for this year's divine blood ceremony. The competition will be decided by drawing lots. 2 people will fight in public. The loser will be eliminated and the winner will advance. In the process of the competition, it is strictly forbidden to borrow external forces, to have deaths and to cheat." The third prince announced the rules of the competition. In fact, it was no different from the arena competition of previous divine blood ceremonies. The millions of Protoss present were well aware of the rules and regulations. After the ceremony, the drawing of lots began. The third prince took out 152 golden jade slips and threw them into the sky. Each jade slip flashed with golden light and flew in the sky, forming a huge ball of light. The appearance and aura of these jade slips were exactly the same. The only difference was the name engraved on the jade slips. When the jade slips filled the sky and danced for a while, the order was completely disrupted. Even the third prince could not remember them clearly. The second prince finally made his move. He kept shooting out beams of divine light and pulled out jade slips from the golden ball of light. The first battle, Jia and I from Xianxia Commandery versus Gu Chongfeng from Chunyang Commandery. The second battle was between Lu Gu from Tongwen County and Li Su from Blackwind County. The third match is from. Every time he drew out 2 jade slips, the second prince would open them and read out the names on the jade slips. Behind him was an Imperial Army commander who was in charge of recording the participants and the order in which they fought. As for the god race commoners in the square, every time they heard the name of a young genius, there would be a burst of exclamations and discussions. Obviously, the young geniuses who were qualified to participate in the grand competition all had quite a reputation among the common people. After a long time, when the second prince read the 71st battle, he frowned slightly and glanced at the third prince from the corner of his eye. But he didn't say anything and just announced loudly as usual, "The 71st battle, Zhenhong from Bloodflame County versus Tang Yu from Dark Blood County." Obviously, the second prince knew that Zhenhong was not on the list. Now that she was on the list, it was most likely added by the third prince at the last minute. Although this was not in line with the rules and was a form of favoritism. But he and the third prince were not gentlemen and had done this kind of thing countless times. He wouldn't use this trivial matter to attack the third prince. He just couldn't understand what the third prince was doing. He actually let the captain of the Last Wind Courtyard participate in this grand competition? Wasn't this looking for a beating? When the time comes, they would lose miserably, lose face for the Last Wind Courtyard and slap the third prince's face. Perhaps the third prince would become the laughingstock of the royal city. After reading the battle list, the second prince put down all the jade slips. He and the third prince stood on the ceremonial stage to supervise the grand competition. The sky-blue defensive light shield under their feet also opened a door. 2 young talents flew out of the crowd and went up to the arena to start the battle. Those 2 were Jia and I and Gu Chongfeng. As the first battle of this grand competition, the 2 were under a lot of pressure in front of millions of people and were very cautious. First they probed each other and attacked. After hundreds of moves back and forth, they tested each other's details and began to speed up the pace of their attacks. For the millions of gods and the common people, the battle between the 2 was very exciting and attracted cheers from time to time. However, the nobles and experts on the 4 viewing platforms did not react to it at all. As for the 2 princes on the ceremonial stage, they didn't even have the interest to take a second look. After all, the strength of the 2 young geniuses was only at the second level of the Divine Lord realm. The second prince was bored, so he turned his head to look at the third prince and asked with a faint smile, "Is it necessary to spend so much money and take such a big risk for a captain of the maidservants?" The third prince certainly understood what he was talking about. He was not angry. He smiled confidently and pretended to be unfathomable. "How can you guess this king's mind?" The second prince curled his lips and sneered, "With your little mind? Do you really think this king doesn't understand? Isn't it just a honey trap to win over young Master Tianxing? However, this king really admires you. In just one day you transformed Zhenhong into that appearance. When Zhenhong entered the arena just now, I don't know how many pairs of eyes were staring at her. I don't know how many rich and powerful children and young geniuses are amazed by her." The third prince was a little smug, but he didn't expose the truth. He said with a smug face, "So, second brother, just wait for the show." "What?" The second prince raised his eyebrows and sneered, "Don't tell me you still have hope that Zhenhong can make it into the top 10. "Why not?" the third prince asked. The second prince turned around and looked at Zhenhong carefully. Then he stretched out 4 fingers and said to the third prince, "For counties. Do you want to bet?" The two brothers had a tacit understanding. The third prince naturally understood what he meant. Whoever lost would have to give up 4 counties and withdraw all their forces and properties. Although it wasn't a shocking bet, it would still hurt the third prince. The third prince pursed his lips and nodded heavily. "This king will bet with you. Haha. You're really confident." The second prince couldn't help but look at him in a new light. He sneered and said, "Unfortunately, confidence is not enough. You're destined to lose." "What do you mean?" The third prince was calm and composed as he asked with a smile. The second prince's smile was somewhat mocking. He said slowly, "In recent years, this king has secretly recruited more than 3,000 young talents and has been secretly training them. This king has selected more than 20 geniuses with the strongest talent and potential in this arena competition. Not only this king but also Wu. Although he is seriously injured and in seclusion, he can't attend this ceremony. But in order to train his trusted subordinates, he didn't hesitate to put more than 30 young geniuses into this competition. Let's put it this way, the top 10 spots are all taken by us. Your Zhenhong girl has no hope at all." Chapter 30-39. The third prince's face suddenly turned ugly. Although he also had the intention to cultivate a team of forces. 9 young geniuses were stuffed into the slots for the arena competition this time. Including Zhenhong, there were a total of 10 geniuses, all of whom were his trusted aides. But now he realized that compared to the second prince and the fifth prince, he was simply too kind. There were only a total of 180 geniuses who were qualified to sign up. The second prince and the fifth prince's trusted aides were more than 60 people, occupying 1/3 of the quota. This arena competition was simply organized for the 2 of them. At that time, 9 out of the 10 geniuses who could receive the baptism of the blood flame sacred tree would be their people. The third prince also felt that Zhenhong definitely had no hope. The most important thing was that he would definitely lose the bet and give up the territory of 4 counties. This time he would lose miserably. The third prince sighed silently, his mood became heavy, and his expression was somewhat gloomy. Seeing his reaction, the second prince's mood was incomparably carefree, and even hummed a little tune. The third prince knew that this was deliberately angering him, but he could not vent his anger, so he could only suppress his anger. At this time, the first round of the tournament ended. Jia Ni and Gu Chongfeng exchanged more than 1,000 moves, and fought for half an hour before the winner was finally decided. Gu Chongfeng lost to Jia Ni's sword by a difference of 1 move, and left the stage full of regret. The whole place was filled with cheers, and Jia Ni opened his arms to embrace the sky, his face brimming with a victorious smile. On the viewing platform, Zhenhong had been watching the battle attentively, watching carefully. Seeing Ji Tianxing looking around with a worried look, she could not help but ask, "Young master, why are you not watching the battle?" Ji Tianxing came back to his senses, waved his hand and said, "It's just chickens pecking at each other, nothing to watch." Zhenhong still had a lot of things to say, but she choked back, not knowing how to continue. Originally, she wanted to persuade Ji Tianxing, although he was predetermined to be in the top 30, and did not need to participate in today's tournament. But he needed to know more about his opponent so that he could win more easily. But now it seemed that all these were nonsense. So she kept silent and continued to watch the second round seriously. The sun continued to rise and time passed quickly. Unknowingly, it was already noon. The grand competition had already progressed to the 30th round, and more than 30 geniuses had successfully advanced. During this period of time, over 70 young geniuses fought intensely, and they presented many brilliant scenes. 7-colored divine light that blotted out the sky, dazzling and ever-changing divine light, and endless loud noises and explosions rang out in the arena for a long time. The millions of God clan warriors in the square were dazzled and excited. While everyone was enjoying the feast for their eyes, they also gained a lot of enlightenment from it. Cheers and worried screams could be heard one after another. Zhenhong watched every match carefully and paid special attention to the dozen or so winners. Taking advantage of the fact that the next match had yet to begin, she frowned and pondered, analyzing the characteristics and weaknesses of those young geniuses. At this time, Ji Tianxing patted her leg and asked, "What are you thinking about?" It couldn't be helped. When they sat together, there was a height difference of 2 meters. Even if Ji Tianxing wanted to pat her on the shoulder, he would have to jump up. Therefore, he could only find a place where he could reach. "Young master, there are a dozen or so young geniuses who are very strong. I'm analyzing their weaknesses and thinking of countermeasures." Ji Tianxing chuckled and said, "Don't be so nervous. Why are you thinking so much? None of the people on the arena today are a match for you. Your real opponents are all in the top 30. Zhenhong was quite surprised and said uneasily, "Young master, do you really think I can make it into the top 30? Ji Tianxing shook his head. "Not the top 30 but the top 10. Zhenhong, degree. What? You're not confident?" Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows when he saw her dazed expression. Zhenhong became even more uneasy. She lowered her head and murmured, "You have such high expectations of me. I'm really afraid I'll disappoint you." Ji Tianxing smiled and said, "Don't think so much. When you get on the arena, don't think about your opponent's moves, attributes, and weaknesses. You just need to focus and use all your strength to execute the Dragon Tribe's ultimate techniques that you've just mastered. The battle will be over. You're worrying so much now because you don't understand how strong you are. When you enter a berserk state and transform into a female T-Rex, you'll be so strong that even you are afraid of yourself." Zhenhong was stunned again. Oh, seeing her dazed expression, Ji Tianxing couldn't help but reach out and flick her forehead. Unfortunately, he couldn't reach her and could only withdraw his hand awkwardly. "Young master, what's wrong?" Zhenhong looked at him in confusion. After thinking for a moment, she understood and took the initiative to bend down and lower her head, placing her forehead in front of him. Ji Tianxing was speechless. He said in a bad mood, "Close your eyes and don't observe the battle. Revise your ultimate techniques." "Yes, young master." Zhenhong nodded. As expected, she closed her eyes and began to review the Dragon Tribe's ultimate techniques. The sun gradually set in the west. 2 hours later, it was finally Zhenhong's turn to go on stage. The 71st battle was between her and Tang Yu of the Dark Blood County. When Zhenhong, dressed in crimson armor, stepped onto the stage with a solemn expression, scattered cheers sounded in the square, mixed with ear-piercing whistles. Moreover, all of them were young men with dazed expressions and dazed eyes. It was obvious that the people didn't recognize Zhenhong in her dragon girl form. Those young men cheered only because of her beauty. As for her opponent, he was an out-and-out young genius. He was dressed in a green robe and wielded a sword. His long hair fluttered in the wind. His face was handsome and his temperament was elegant. Most importantly, his strength had reached the 4th level of the Divine Sovereign realm, ranking him among the middle-level Divine Sovereigns. This person stepped on the sky and calmly stepped onto the stage, causing countless people to cheer. There were also many God Tribe women who excitedly shouted his name like a group of little fangirls. Without a doubt, Tang Yu was one of the best of the younger generation and was very famous. He wasn't just famous in the Dark Blood County. In recent decades, he had mingled in the royal city and made a name for himself. In the hearts of countless people, the result of the battle between these two would be decided in less than 100 breaths. Tang Yu would undoubtedly win. After the two of them stepped onto the stage, they simply bowed and greeted each other, then attacked. Tang Yu was naturally elegant and graceful, waving his sword and displaying his divine powers. He only used 80% of his strength, preparing to test the waters with a few moves before using his full strength to defeat Zhenhong. In this way, not only did he take care of Zhenhong's face, but he also maintained his own image. However, Zhenhong obeyed Ji Tianqing's instructions. Without any distractions, she threw away all distracting thoughts and used the dragon tribe's ultimate techniques with all her might. Dragon Shadow Palm. Her body ignited with golden light that soared into the sky, erupting with violent divine power, and brazenly slashed out a sky full of dragon claw phantoms. Bang! 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 In just an instant, the sky full of golden dragon claw phantoms drowned Tang Yu, and an earth-shattering explosion erupted. Chapter 30-40. Boom! Boom! Loud noises like muffled thunders exploded in the arena one after another. Tang Yu's sword Dao divine ability directly fell apart. He was also hit by the dragon claws and flew out in a sorry state. He drew an arc in the sky and fell tens of thousands of feet away. He struggled to get up, but his face was pale and he spat out 3 blood arrows in a row. In the end, he staggered and swayed a few times before he fell on the arena with a plop. It was not until then that the trembling arena gradually calmed down. The battle came to an abrupt end. Tang Yu was defeated by Zhenhong in one move. It was a real insta-kill. When the golden light dissipated, everyone could see the situation in the arena. Everyone was dumbfounded. Not only were the millions of Protoss collectively petrified, but they also stared at Zhenhong and Tang Yu, who was seriously injured and lying on the ground. Even the dignitaries and experts on the 4 viewing platforms were shocked. Their eyes were filled with astonishment. Even the second prince and the third prince who were standing on the stage were stunned. Before this, there were few battles between geniuses that could cause such a reaction. Now Zhenhong did it. Of course, Zhenhong was also dumbfounded. She stood on the stage in a daze, looking at her right hand in a daze. Her eyes were filled with tears. At this moment, her emotions were very complicated and she was very excited. But she couldn't laugh. She just wanted to cry. It would be best if she threw herself into the arms of the young master and burst into tears. After a moment of silence, the audience burst into earth-shattering cheers and exclamations. Hundreds of thousands of people cheered in unison and discussed excitedly. The terrifying sound wave torrent caused the entire plaza to tremble. Oh my god! Am I hallucinating? What the hell? Tang Yu was insta-killed? Who is that beautiful and strong woman? How can she be so powerful? Oh my god. Tang Yu, the little overlord of the Dark Blood County, was insta-killed by a woman with one punch. Hee hee. That's why I said don't act cool in front of everyone. You'll only be cool for a second. Tang Yu is usually very dissolute. Now he has suffered a big setback. Let's see how he can attract bees and butterflies in the future. There was a lot of discussion in the square. The dignitaries and experts on the 4 viewing platforms were also whispering to each other, inquiring about Zhenhong's identity. On the ceremony platform, the third prince came back to his senses and grinned proudly. Although his smile was a bit silly, after all he was also frightened. He guessed that after Zhenhong's bloodline awakened his strength. But he didn't expect him to be so strong. Oh, this was a completely different person. Is this the same Zhenhong? The second prince's face darkened. He frowned and the corner of his mouth twitched. Third prince, you're so cunning. His heart ached because Tang Yu was one of his confidants that he had secretly trained. The third prince said proudly, beaming with joy, "This is called wisdom. Do you know how to play the pig to eat the tiger? You are a pig to begin with. Do you still need to pretend to be one?" The second prince glared at him. At this time Tang Yu left the arena awkwardly. Zhenhong also held back her tears and flew back to Ji Tianqing. She didn't sit down but bowed deeply to Ji Tianqing. 2 sparkling teardrops rolled down from the corners of her eyes and landed on Ji Tianqing's body. This scene caused the dignitaries on the viewing platforms to discuss and speculate in private. Ji Tianqing took her arm, pressed her to the seat beside him and asked, "So many people are watching. What are you doing? Why are you crying?" "Thank you, young master." Zhenhong reached out to wipe her tears, but she couldn't stop them from flowing down again. "You were right. The power of the Dragon Clan's unique skill is beyond my imagination. In the past few hundred years, I never dared to imagine that I could be so powerful. It was you who helped me awaken my bloodline and give me a new life. I'm no longer the Zhenhong of the past." Seeing her so sad, Ji Tianqing subconsciously reached out his hand, wanting to pat her shoulder and comfort her. But it wasn't high enough. Forget it. I'll just take my hand back. Next, 5 more matches were carried out in the arena. At this point, the first round of the competition was over. 76 geniuses advanced and the other half were eliminated. The third prince loudly announced the list of those who advanced and allowed everyone to rest for an hour before continuing the second round of the competition. During this period, the people who advanced didn't dare to be distracted. They seized the time to circulate their energy and take pills to recover their strength. Zhenhong wasn't injured and she didn't use much divine power. After all, she wasn't mentally prepared for the battle to end. Therefore, she still listened to Ji Tianqing's arrangement and continued to review the 18 unique skills of the Dragon Clan. She was thinking in her heart. Which unique skill should she use in the next round? Just as she was thinking over and over again and couldn't make up her mind, Ji Tianqing made the final decision. You're still using that Dragon Shadow Palm. If you can defeat your opponent in one move, there's no need to drag it out until the second move. Also, don't expose your trump cards so easily. Zhenhong came to a sudden realization and hurriedly nodded to express her understanding. Soon the second round of the competition began. The second prince drew lots again, and 38 pairs were selected from the 76 young geniuses. This time, Zhenhong was placed in the 37th match. Ji Tianqing was a little depressed. He frowned and muttered, "What kind of bad luck is this? I'm actually placed in the second last match? What's wrong, young master?" Zhenhong was puzzled. Ji Tianqing explained, "Today's competition isn't good. If you go on stage earlier, we can leave after the competition." Zhenhong was taken aback for a moment before nodding in agreement. "That's true. If we wait until it's dark, we'll delay your rest." She thought for a moment and asked, "Young master, why don't you go back and rest first? I'll go back after the competition." "No need, I'll wait." Ji Tianqing waved his hand and said, "You continue to consolidate your foundation of the divine Tao. I'm going to take a nap." With that, he reclined on the chair and closed his eyes to take a nap. Zhenhong didn't dare to disturb him. He could only silently adjust his breathing and work hard to consolidate his foundation. Ji Tianqing appeared to be taking a nap, but he was actually observing Prince Lian and the reaction in the palace. The fifth prince's men were crippled, and the experts and forces under his command had also collapsed. This was a huge blow to Prince Lian's plan. He already had a premonition that Prince Lian would soon make a move against him. In addition, the fifth prince was beaten to such a state. 2 days had passed and the king must know the whole story. But what made him feel strange was that the king didn't react at all when his youngest son was beaten to such a state. Wasn't this too strange? Even if there was a reason, the fifth prince's injuries and poisoning were his own fault. But the king was the same as the top experts. He only recognized who had the bigger fist and didn't care about reason. The king pretended that nothing had happened, which made him more vigilant. Chapter 30-41. Time passed very quickly. At dusk, it was finally Zhenhong's turn to take the stage to compete. Young geniuses who could enter the second round of the grand competition were basically all middle-level divine lords. Occasionally there were a few low-level divine lords, but they were also peak third-stage realm and grasped special secret techniques. Zhenhong's luck was not too good. Her opponent was stronger than Tang Yu. Not only did his strength reach peak fourth-stage divine lord realm, but he also grasped several powerful divine abilities and ultimate skills. Furthermore, this ordinary-looking young man was a trusted aide groomed by the fifth prince. The two people fought on the stage. The young man did not show any mercy, going all out the moment he made his move. But the outcome was destined long ago. Zhenhong used her full strength once again, executing that dragon shadow palm. Golden dragon claws that filled the sky slammed down, releasing a power that could obliterate heaven and earth. The divine art light shadow that the other party executed, the divine Tao laws released, all disintegrated under the dragon claws. Boom, 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 boom. The young man's divine ability was destroyed and he was sent flying back. However, his injuries were not as miserable as Tang Yu's. After landing, he spat out a mouthful of blood and could still continue fighting. Seeing this scene, Zhenhong had no choice but to use the second dragon race's ultimate skill. Dragon Elephant Divine Fist. Following her angry roar, both fists ruthlessly struck out endless golden light, condensing into a mountain-sized dragon-elephant phantom. This divine ability secret technique was exactly the same as the dragon-elephant divine fist executed by Ji Tianxing. The difference was that the dragon-elephant divine fist executed by Zhen Hong could not be mentioned in the same breath as Ji Tianxing. It looked the same on the surface, but the power was 10 times worse. But it was more than enough to defeat that young man. Boom. Crack. Amidst a shocking loud noise, the young man's divine ability was defeated. He was blasted out again, rolling and smashing at the edge of the stage. If not for the sky blue light shield blocking, he would have long been blasted flying to the plaza. This time he lay on the ground with blood spurting out of his 7 orifices. He groaned in pain a few times and hurriedly admitted defeat. Fortunately, he admitted defeat in time. Zhen Hong accumulated her full strength again, preparing the next ultimate skill. If he had been a moment later, he would have been beaten to a pulp by Zhen Hong. Zhen Hong only used 2 moves to easily win again. The square was once again in an uproar. Countless commoners cried out in shock and disbelief. The dignitaries and experts on the viewing platform also found it hard to believe. After these 2 battles, Zhen Hong had become the most dazzling genius powerhouse present, attracting everyone's attention. Countless people were still talking about her even after the 38 Elders competition had ended. After that, the third prince announced the list of those who had been promoted. A total of 38 geniuses had advanced and were qualified to participate in the 3rd round of the competition tomorrow. Tomorrow morning they would compete with the top 30 geniuses in the arena. Today's competition had come to an end, and the people on the viewing platform left one after another. The commoners in the square also quickly dispersed. Ji Tianxing and Zhen Hong were just about to get up and leave when he noticed a sharp gaze staring at him from the eastern viewing platform. It was as if there was a thorn in his back, making him very uncomfortable. He turned his head and saw that in the middle of the eastern viewing platform, Prince Lian was staring at him coldly. On the left and right sides of Prince Lian there were 4 young experts. There were 3 men and 1 woman, all of whom were god monarchs of the 5th or 6th stage. Their brows were filled with an unruly aura. The 4 young geniuses were also coldly sizing him and Zhen Hong up, not hiding their hostility at all. Ji Tianxing glanced at the 4 people, turned around expressionlessly and left with Zhen Hong. On the way back to Longwind Courtyard, Ji Tianxing sat in a luxurious carriage with Zhen Hong standing beside him. After a moment of silence, Zhen Hong asked, "Young master, that black-robed youth seems to have a deep hatred for you." The 4 young experts beside him also had strong enmity towards us. I guess that the 4 of them are also going to participate in the arena competition. Moreover, they should be the same as you. They are all in the top 30. Ji Tianxing nodded slightly with a look of approval. Your observation is very careful, and your analysis is also very correct. That's right. The black-robed youth is Prince Lian and he is coming for me. As for the 4 young geniuses, they are all elites under his command. In tomorrow's arena competition they will definitely attack us. If you meet them at that time you must deal with them carefully. Don't let your guard down. Zhen Hong nodded to show that he understood and said worriedly, I have heard of Prince Lian's name several times. He seems to be from the imperial family of the Great Yan Empire. Young master, how did you provoke such a strong enemy? The other party hates you so much. Do you want to ask His Majesty to mediate? The matter between the 5th prince and Prince Lian was top secret, so Zhen Hong certainly did not know. Ji Tianxing waved his hand and said, There is nothing to mediate. You don't have to worry. I have my own countermeasures. Prince Lian is playing tricks in the arena competition, so there is nothing to worry about. Let's just rely on our own strength. What we really need to worry about is that after the divine blood ceremony he will secretly play tricks. After a while the carriage returned to the Chongfeng courtyard. As soon as Ji Tianxing and Zhen Hong got out of the carriage, the guard at the door hurriedly came to report the news. Young master, Miss Ning has arrived and is waiting for you in the study. Ji Tianxing was startled for a moment. Then he raised his eyebrows and his calm eyes softened a little. I know. Seiji nodded and brought Masahiro through the door to the study. Zhen Hong certainly knew that the Miss Ning mentioned by the guard was Princess Ning's niece, the first Miss Ning of Tianxia County. She was keenly aware that when Ji Tianxing heard the news his eyes and mood eased a lot. When they were halfway there, Ji Tianxing looked back at her and said, You must be tired after 2 rounds today. You don't have to follow me anymore. Go back and rest. Tomorrow is the real fierce battle. You should consolidate your foundation tonight. Zhenhong reflexively wanted to nod his head and say yes. But she hesitated for a moment and shook her head. Thank you for your concern, young master. Zhenhong is not tired. It's Zhenhong's duty to serve you. Ji Tianqing didn't say much and just let her be. Soon they arrived at the study. As soon as they stepped into the study, they saw an elegant beauty in a light green dress sitting at the desk and reading quietly. Under the warm gemstone light, her profile was quite beautiful and elegant. According to the aesthetics of the Bloodfire Divine Country, she was absolutely a beautiful woman. Miss Ning, you're late. Ji Tianqing walked towards her and greeted her with a faint smile on his face. Ning Xiyuan woke up with a start. She quickly put down the book, stood up and bowed. Greetings, young Master Tianqing. Sit down and talk. Ji Tianqing walked to the desk and sat down facing Ning Xiyuan. Ning Xiyuan glanced at Zhenhong and asked, Young Master, is this your personal maid? Chapter 3042. Ji Tianqing didn't have much of a reaction. When Zhenhong heard those words, her heart skipped a beat and she was a little embarrassed. But she didn't utter a word, hoping that Ji Tianqing would answer yes. But Ji Tianqing's answer disappointed her. What personal maid? Miss Ning must be joking. Ji Tianqing shook his head and explained, She's called Zhenhong, the leader of the maids in Changfeng Courtyard. I see. Ning Xiyuan nodded slightly, finally understanding the situation. Although she had been to Royal City many times before. But every time she visited her aunt, Princess Ning, she stayed in the third prince's residence and had never been to Changfeng Courtyard. So she didn't know Zhenhong. Ji Tianqing asked unintentionally, I heard from the third prince that every time you come, you stay in the prince's residence. Why did you come to Changfeng Courtyard? Why are you looking for me? Ning Xiyuan shook her head and said, I've already visited my aunt. Every time I stay in the prince's residence, I'm already bored. Since you're staying in Changfeng Courtyard, of course I have to come here. It's more convenient. Ji Tianqing didn't think much and asked about her cultivation situation. Zhenhong listened silently and a little scheme popped up in her heart. Young master lives here, Miss Ning also lives here. More convenient. What does that mean? What's more convenient? Could it be that between young master and Miss Ning there's really... At this time Ning Xiyuan said, Thanks to young master's help, my pain has been relieved. After taking the pill you gave me, my bloodline and innate talent had a qualitative leap. Not long ago I broke through to the monarch god realm and now my foundation is stable. I have a premonition that in less than a year I will be able to advance to the second degree realm. Ji Tianqing smiled and said, This is called good preparation. Ning's bloodline is a quasi-king bloodline, but because of the existence of Heavenly Slayer, it suppressed your innate talent and potential. Now that Heavenly Slayer has been lifted, your accumulated potential for many years will be released and your strength will definitely increase explosively. Ning Xiyuan continued, It's a pity that I was still a step too late even though I rushed over. I just arrived in the capital today. After visiting Auntie, the arena tournament is almost over. Ji Tianqing chuckled and said, It is indeed a pity. If you had come a few days earlier you could have signed up and tested your strength. Ning Xiyuan hurriedly waved his hands and said modestly, Don't laugh at me, young master. If I participate in the competition with this bit of strength, I will only embarrass myself in front of everyone. I won't be able to make it in time for this year's ceremony. I can only wait 50 years before I try again. The two of them chatted back and forth talking about things that could be big or small. Zhenhong stood quietly to the side and listened for a long time. Through their conversation she gradually understood the relationship between Ji Tianqing and Ning Xiyuan. Only now did she know that Ji Tianqing had not only helped her awaken her bloodline, he had also helped the Ning clan resolve the bloodline defect. He had also given the Ning clan a new lease of life. This made Zhenhong very shocked. She thought to herself, Who exactly is young master? He actually has such unfathomable means. Previously I thought that young master was interested in me and deliberately helped me awaken my bloodline. Now it seems that I was thinking too much. Young master has always been straightforward and upright. He is good at helping others and does not ask for anything in return. To us, it is a great opportunity that can turn our lives upside down and be reborn. But to him it's just a trivial matter that he can do casually. The more Zhenhong thought about it, the more she felt that Ji Tianqing was unfathomable. He was so mysterious that she could not see through him. But the more it was so, the more she rejoiced. To be able to meet Ji Tianxing was truly a blessing of 3 lifetimes. At the same time, she secretly made up her mind to follow Ji Tianxing no matter what. Even if she followed him to the ends of the world and wandered the 4 seas, it would be a great blessing. Unknowingly, 2 hours passed. After Ji Tianxing and Ning Xiyuan finished chatting, he said goodbye and good night and prepared to rest. Zhen Hong also tactfully retreated and returned to her residence to meditate and adjust her breath. The night was silent. Changfeng courtyard was quiet and peaceful. Early the next morning, the sun had just risen. Zhen Hong finished meditating. After washing up, she went to serve Ji Tianxing to get up. Unexpectedly, as soon as she walked to Ji Tianxing's residence, she saw that Ji Tianxing had already finished washing up and was leisurely eating breakfast with Ning Xiyuan in the living room. Miss Ning is even earlier than me? Zhen Hong paused and thought to herself, young master basically does not eat and Changfeng courtyard has never prepared breakfast. Those breakfast dishes are so exquisite and delicious. Did Miss Ning make them herself? Why is Miss Ning more dutiful than me, a maid? Thinking of this, Zhen Hong's expression was a little uneasy, and there was a little uneasiness in her heart. But she herself did not understand the source of the uneasiness. At this time, Ji Tianxing saw her enter the living room, so he waved and said, Zhen Hong, come and taste Miss Ning's cooking. These snacks are all made with the best ingredients, which can benefit the qi, nourish the spirit and condense the soul. Ning Xiyuan also looked at her calmly and did not speak. A rich and powerful family like the Ning family had a deep-rooted concept of superiority and inferiority. Maids and servants were not qualified to sit at the same table with their masters, let alone eat at the same table. But since Ji Tianxing had spoken, Ning Xiyuan naturally did not stop him and just kept silent. Zhen Hong quickly bowed and greeted the two, then said, young master and Miss Ning, please enjoy. Zhen Hong does not dare to break the rules, so I will retreat outside. After saying that, she bowed and was about to leave. This was the attitude a maid should have. Ning Xiyuan withdrew her gaze, reached out and picked up a piece of pastry and put it in Ji Tianxing's bowl. Young master, please concentrate on eating. You have to participate in the arena competition later. Ji Tianxing did not answer. He reached out and grabbed Zhen Hong and pulled her to sit beside him. Hurry up and finish eating. Don't waste time. Zhen Hong's wrist was held by him, but she could not use any strength and could not resist at all. Even if she sat down, she felt as if she was sitting on pins and needles, and her heart was uneasy. Ning Xiyuan frowned slightly and looked deeply at Ji Tianxing and Zhen Hong. As intelligent as she was, of course, she saw some subtle problems. But she kept her composure and ate in silence. This breakfast passed in an awkward and subtle atmosphere. A quarter of an hour later, Ji Tianxing took Ning Xiyuan and Zhen Hong in a carriage and left Changfeng courtyard for the square in the city. When the 3 of them went to the northern viewing platform, almost all the people on the 4 viewing platforms had arrived. The huge square was crowded with nearly 1 million Protoss people, and there was a hubbub of voices. Not long after, the 2nd prince and the 3rd prince arrived. The 2 of them went to the ceremonial platform and announced that the arena competition would continue. Next, the drawing of lots for the 3rd round of the tournament began. There were a total of 68 young geniuses in this round of the tournament. The 3rd prince threw out 68 jade slips, which flew back and forth in the sky and formed a golden ball of light. The 2nd prince waved his hand and shot out beams of divine light, constantly drawing out pairs of jade slips. Then he announced the list of matches one by one. Zhen Hong was scheduled to fight in the 7th match, while Ji Tianxing was scheduled to fight in the last match. Chapter 3043. The young geniuses who could enter the 3rd round of the tournament were all powerhouses. Most of them were the 2nd prince and the 5th prince's trusted aides. Zhen Hong's opponent was one of the young powerhouses under the 5th prince's command. Ji Tianxing's opponent was one of the 2nd prince's trusted aides, a seeded contestant whom the 2nd prince had high hopes for. Originally, the 2nd prince had planned to place more importance on this young genius after he entered the top 10 and was baptized by the blood flame sacred tree. But now it seemed that his luck was too bad. When he announced the battle between Ji Tianxing and Lu Kongyan, his heart was bleeding and his face was as cold as ice. Needless to say, even he could not defeat Ji Tianxing. How could Lu Kongyan be a match for Ji Tianxing? He would definitely be ground to the ground. After reading the name list, the 2nd prince put down the jade slip with a dark face. Glancing at the 3rd prince beside him, The second prince frowned when he saw the smirk on the third prince's face and the gloating look on his face. Why are you so happy? Lu Kongyan is not the only trusted aide I've trained. The third prince smiled and said telepathically, Lu Kongyan has been eliminated in this round. What about the next round? What about the next round? With Tianxing's strength and means, he's just a noob in the tournament. It just depends on who's unlucky enough to become his stepping stones. The second prince's eyes twitched and he said hatefully, why did you let him participate in the tournament? Isn't this unnecessary? Just use your connections and let him be baptized by the sacred tree. It's not that difficult. The third prince retorted righteously, second brother, you're wrong. Am I the kind of person who plays favoritism? Moreover, young Master Tianxing is righteous, confident, and proud. Why would he use such a method to be baptized by the sacred tree? He. The second prince rolled his eyes and sneered at him. He did not say anything else. At the same time, on the northern viewing platform, Ji Tianxing, Ning Xiyuan, and Zhen Hong were discussing in low voices. The young geniuses participating in this round are all the top geniuses in the Divine Kingdom. If I'm not wrong, most of these people are the confidants of the princes, and they're secretly cultivating their forces. Don't worry, young master. Master didn't arrange much. If there really is a genius secretly nurtured by the master, I should be able to recognize him. Young Master Tianxing, there's no need to worry. You just have to fight with all your might. Your goal is to win the championship, so you'll have to eliminate a lot of geniuses. Ji Tianxing sat in the middle, Ning Xiyuan sat on the left, and Zhen Hong sat on the right. The two women were both beauties that could topple cities, yet they were hugging Ji Tianxing in a very intimate manner. This aroused the envy and jealousy of countless people, and they secretly criticized him countless times. Coincidentally, the second prince, Wuxia, was also there. How could he miss such a grand divine blood ceremony? He had been here the day before and watched the whole day. Moreover, he was a relative of the royal family, so he was also sitting on the northern viewing platform. His seat was not far from Ji Tianxing. They were only 3 rows apart, less than 100 feet away. Therefore he could clearly see every move of Ji Tianxing, Zhen Hong, and Ning Xiyuan. Even when the 3 of them were whispering to each other, their intimate expressions and actions did not escape his eyes. Yesterday, Wuxia had been shown off for the whole day. He had watched Ji Tianxing and Zhen Hong being all lovey-dovey. Today it was even worse. Not only Zhen Hong but even Ning Xiyuan had come. The 2 women sandwiched Ji Tianxing in the middle, showing off their affection for each other throughout the whole process. Wuxia was restless. His face was pale and he glared at the 3 of them fiercely. His chest was burning with jealousy. However, the most infuriating thing was that Ji Tianxing and the other 2 were still as before, completely ignoring his existence. To Wuxia, this was the greatest humiliation. He had completely lost the mood to watch the battle. His eyes were fixed on Ji Tianxing, Zhen Hong, and Ning Xiyuan. The angrier he was, the more he wanted to stare at them. However, the more he stared, the more his jealousy burned. Not long after, Zhen Hong went up the stage to compete. This time she used 3 moves to defeat her opponent. The audience cheered thunderously and she became the focus of the audience again. When she returned to the viewing platform and sat down, Ji Tianxing actually whispered something in her ear. She did not know what they were talking about. Zhen Hong nodded repeatedly as if he was shy, or as if he was thinking about something. When Wuxia saw this, he was so angry that his chest rose and fell rapidly. His eyes were almost red. Bastard! What a shameless bastard! In broad daylight, in front of millions of people, he has no sense of shame and is whispering sweet nothings to Zhen Hong. Ning Xiyuan, oh Ning Xiyuan, are you blind? The 2 of them are right beside you, being intimate in front of you. How can you stand it? Wuxia was filled with grief and indignation as he roared in his heart. He really could not understand how Ji Tianxing had managed to win the favor of Ning Xiyuan and Zhen Hong. The most bizarre thing was that the 2 women were with him at the same time and nothing happened. Wuxia did not even dare to dream of this kind of happiness. However, Ji Tianxing had done it. His jealousy and hatred for Ji Tianxing had reached an uncontrollable level. At this moment, a young aristocrat beside him noticed that his emotions were in turmoil. He could not help but ask, "Second Prince, what's wrong? Are you not feeling well?" The young aristocrat was dressed in a white robe and held a folding fan in his hand. He was dressed like a dashing prince. His name was Zeluo and he was the son of the general of the south. He was one of the top nobles in Monarch City and was very close to Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian quickly suppressed his anger and forced himself to remain calm. He said, "It's nothing. I just couldn't help but feel my blood boiling when I saw how exciting their fight was." Zhou secretly sent a telepathic message and said with a playful smile, "Is that so? Isn't it because you saw that nobody sitting on two peerless beauties and felt indignant?" Zhou Xian was stunned. He turned to look at him and asked, "Brother Zhou, do you feel the same way?" "Of course." Zhou waved his fan out of habit and sighed. "Noble young masters like you and me, who are of noble status and outstanding talents, can't even win the favor of the beauties. Instead, it's those despicable scoundrels who use some dirty tricks to win the hearts of the beauties. What's wrong with this world? Are we too pure and not shameless enough?" Zhou Xian nodded in agreement. He said angrily, "Yes. It's all our fault for being too gentlemanly and being restricted by so many rules. On the other hand, those bastards who were born lowly and had dirty means would resort to any means to please the beautiful woman. The funniest thing is that he has to curry favor with the beauties to have the right to do so. Otherwise he would be like those lowly commoners, crowding in the public square with millions of people and looking up at us like a toad." Zhou could hear the hatred in his voice. He looked at Xianxia and the other two with a playful gaze. Then he raised his eyebrows at Zhou Xian and sent a telepathic message to instigate him. "Since you hate him so much, why don't you kill him? Do you still want to watch him walk in front of you?" Chapter 3044. Zhou Xian was stunned for a moment before he shook his head with dim eyes. I can't defeat him." Not only could he not defeat him, but he was also completely defeated. Moreover, there were still remnants of the poison in his body that had yet to be removed. Even the tool to carry on his ancestral line had only grown out recently and had yet to fully recover. Whenever he thought of that incident, the shadow in his heart would grow infinitely. Zhou waved his folding fan again and chuckled. "The weak work hard, and the strong work hard. Second Prince, there's no need for proud sons like you and me to do it personally." Zhou Xian frowned and said gloomily, "I also want to hire a strong man to kill him, but I don't meet his requirements." Previously he was willing to spend 30 billion to hire the Evil Blood Palace to assassinate Xianxia. However, the Evil Blood Palace was unwilling and wanted to add the Furious Blood Sacred Tree. That was the most precious treasure of the prince's residence. He did not dare to trade it. Zhou patted his shoulder and chuckled. "Second Prince, a man should repay kindness and revenge as he pleases. Don't be timid or you'll only be wronging yourself. Just like now, you can only stare and sulk as you watch that brat take away the woman you like. Money and treasures are just worldly possessions. As long as you can vent your anger and make yourself happy, just do it. You're the crown prince of the divine nation and the second grandson of the monarch. Don't you think it's too ridiculous?" Zhou was a hedonistic son. He usually drank and went to brothels with Zhou Xian. They were so close that they shared a pair of pants. Therefore he casually blurted out these taboo words. Zhou Xian fell silent. He stared at his feet with his head lowered and struggled internally. Zhou transmitted his voice again. "These are my heartfelt words. This is what I do. That's why I can live a carefree life. In the past, there was a son of a princess who wanted to snatch the top courtesan from me. He even wanted to use underhanded means. I didn't say anything and sent someone to kill him that very night. Things got out of hand. My father's salary was deducted for 100 years and he was scolded by the monarch. I was beaten half to death by my father and locked up for 10 years. But so what? Now that I've vented my anger and felt good, I won't regret it anymore." Then he patted Zhou Xian's shoulder and said earnestly, "Second Prince, think about it carefully." "Yes." Zhou Xian replied without even raising his head. After a long time, when he raised his head, his gaze had become firm, and there was no longer any struggle or hesitation in his heart. After an entire 4 hours, this round of the competition finally came to an end. The final battle began. A tall and sturdy young man in black armor with a broad back flew into the arena. This was a member of the Blood Flame Divine race. He was over 3 meters tall and had a head full of purple hair. His entire body exuded a valiant aura. He stood proudly in the ring with his arms crossed in front of his chest. His face was expressionless. The Protoss in the square immediately cheered and shouted. Many of them began to whisper to each other and discuss the situation. It's Shui Bufan. He's finally here. The 5th hero of the 10 heroes of the Monarch City, the best of the younger generation. The last time he showed himself was 2 years ago. Now that he's here again, he seems to be even stronger than before. I wonder who his opponent is. He's so unlucky and pitiful. I remember his name seems to be Tianxing. Why haven't I heard of this name before? That's right. This person has never fought on the arena before. He must be a backdoor entrant who's been internally selected to be in the top 30. Tianxing will be brutally beaten by Shui Bufan later. He'll be defeated in 3 to 5 moves. Won't that be a slap to the faces of those nobles? Just as everyone was discussing, Tianxing stood up from the spectator stand. Zhenhong looked at him and said with a smile, "Be careful, young master." Ning Xiyuan also reminded, "Young master Tianxing, don't be too anxious to end the battle. It's most important to preserve your strength." Tianxing nodded and stepped into the sky, landing on the arena. His appearance caused the people in the square to discuss even more enthusiastically. That kid is Tianxing? Shui Bufan's opponent? He's actually from another race? He looks ordinary. He's definitely not Shui Bufan's opponent. That kid came out from the northern viewing platform. Could it be that his backer is a relative of the royal family? Who cares who his backer is? The arena competition relies on strength. He'll be beaten down later and leave the arena in humiliation. The commoners despised people like Tianxing who relied on his connections to participate in the arena competition. The commoners despised him the most. In fact, for some reason, countless people had a common enemy and treated him as an enemy. Hundreds of thousands of people were shouting, hoping that Shui Bufan would ruthlessly beat Tianxing and make him lose face. Only in this way could the people vent their anger. This was also another way for the people to fight back against those high and mighty nobles. On the arena, Tianxing and Shui Bufan stood 1,000 feet apart. Shui Bufan looked at him coldly and said proudly, "I'm Shui Bufan, one of the 10 heroes of the royal city. My master is the leader of the Qianji sect." Tianxing had a smile at the corner of his mouth. After listening to him, he said, "And then?" Shui Bufan frowned and said with a sneer, "You're called Tianxing, right? I've never heard of your name and I don't know where you came from. Although you relied on some connections to enter the predetermined list and directly participate in this round of the competition. But I want to remind you that in the arena competition, swords and sabers have no eyes. Don't put on airs. If you don't want to be seriously injured and lose face, admit defeat now." Tianxing's smile became even wider and asked, "Are you done?" Shui Bufan's sneer became even more intense as he said contemptuously, "What? You're not willing to accept it? You talk too much nonsense." Tianxing shook his head and finally lost his patience. As his voice fell, he raised his right hand like lightning and slashed at Shui Bufan. Swoosh. It was a very ordinary palm and did not use any magical skills. However, that 100-feet palm shadow that cut through the sky contained more than 30 kinds of power of laws. Its speed was as fast as an aurora, its power could destroy heaven and earth, and its momentum was like the sky collapsing and the earth sinking. In that instant the space of the entire arena froze. Shui Bufan was suppressed by the invisible divine power, and his body stiffened on the spot. His expression was stunned and his eyes were wide open, revealing a look of deep horror. However, his hand held the hilt of the sword, but it was too late to draw the sword. Boom! A deafening loud sound burst out. The 100-feet large golden palm shadow slammed into Shui Bufan, exploding with dazzling light that filled the sky. Among them there was also a purple flower of blood mixed in. Shui Bufan flew 20,000 feet backward, slamming into the sky blue shield and fell to the ground with a bang. He opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of black blood. His eyes closed a few times and then slowly closed. He fainted on the spot. The battle was over. The boisterous square instantly fell silent. Everyone had a dull face, staring at Tianxing in horror as if they had seen a ghost. The 2 princes on the ceremony stage had long expected this result. The 3rd prince was full of smiles and in high spirits. The 2nd prince looked depressed and couldn't help but sigh. "Shui Bufan, this bastard, why are you talking so much nonsense? Shut up now, right?" Wonderful Book House. Chapter 3045. This round of the competition was over. Another 34 young geniuses were eliminated on the spot. The second prince had suffered heavy losses, and his expression did not look too good. Similarly, many of the trusted geniuses that the fifth prince had secretly nurtured were also eliminated. After an hour of rest, the fourth round of the competition began. It was close to noon and the sun was shining brightly in the sky. However, the nearly 1 million people in the square were patiently watching and discussing the battles. No one left early. Everyone knew that the young geniuses who could advance to this stage were the best of the younger generation. The following battles would be more and more exciting. Not to mention the scorching sun in the sky. Even if the sky was raining knives, they would still watch the entire competition. On the ceremony stage, the third prince took out 34 jade slips, and the second prince drew lots to announce the battle list. The names of the 34 young geniuses were read out one by one. Of course, the names of Ji Tianxing and Jin Hong were included. Coincidentally, Ji Tianxing was the first to fight. His opponent was Bai Hao, who was also one of the 10 heroes of the royal city. Not only did this person come from a prominent family, but he was also talented. Moreover, he was the backbone of the second prince's faction, and also a trusted subordinate that the second prince had specially nurtured. When the second prince announced the battle list, the names of these two people were like a blow to his head, and his face immediately collapsed. At that moment he wished he could chop off his hands and roared angrily in his heart, "Damn! Can I still keep my hands? What kind of bad luck is this?" First Shui Bufan was crushed and now Bai Hao is also going to be eliminated. These two people are elites who will definitely enter the top 10. Why am I so unlucky? Tianxing, you really are this king's jinx. The second prince was so depressed that he wanted to vomit blood, but the third prince smiled even more brightly. He pretended to comfort the second prince. "Second prince, my condolences. It can't be helped, the trusted subordinates that you and the fifth prince have nurtured are all top geniuses. Now 70% of the 34 geniuses are your people. Therefore the chances of them bumping into Tianxing are too high. But I don't have such worries. After all, I only arranged 9 people and 4 have already been eliminated. With only 5 people left, it's still very difficult to bump into Tianxing." The second prince pretended not to hear him and continued to draw lots to announce the list of matches. When he read the 15th match, his furrowed brows relaxed a little. The two sides of this battle were Jin Hong and Yuewu City. He was also a famous peak genius in Yuewu City. Furthermore, he was a famous figure of the younger generation under the fifth prince. His talent, strength and means were not far from Bai Hao's. The second prince felt slightly comforted as he thought to himself, "Fortunately, it was old fifth's men. This prince has suffered heavy losses, so old fifth won't have it easy either." Jin Hong was also amazing. In the past she was so ordinary that no one would pay attention to her. However, after hanging out with Tianxing for a few days, she had actually undergone an earth-shattering change, becoming a top-notch genius in a single leap. The limelight of this grand ceremony has been completely stolen by the two of them. Soon the list of names was announced and the battle began. A tall and sturdy young man in luxurious clothes flew out from the northern viewing platform. His figure landed gracefully on the arena. He was none other than Bai Hao. He held a black scabbard saber in his left hand, and his right hand hung by his side. He stared at the ground expressionlessly. If his opponent was someone else, he would definitely be in high spirits and full of fighting spirit. Unfortunately, he knew that his opponent was Tianxing and his heart sank. When Ji Tianxing was fighting Shui Bufan, he had severely injured Shui Bufan and knocked him out with one move. Bai Hao had seen the entire process clearly from the viewing platform. He asked himself honestly, if he were Shui Bufan, he would not be able to change the outcome either. He would still end up the same way. He had even heard of Tianxing's name before the divine blood ceremony. After all, he was the second prince's trusted aide. In the past, Ji Tianxing had gone against the second prince and killed Princess Tianfeng and many monarch god experts. Bai Hao knew about this. Therefore he was feeling very complicated at this moment. In the end, he could only sigh with emotion. Damn it, why am I so unlucky to encounter a plague like him? When he muttered this sentence, a white figure flashed in front of him. Ji Tianxing also flew across the sky and landed on the arena, standing 1,000 feet away from him. Bai Hao looked up with a gloomy face and his eyes were vigilant and alert. Ji Tianxing looked at him with a faint smile and said, "Looking at you, you must have guessed the result. Why don't you admit defeat now and save me the trouble?" Bai Hao's mouth twitched and his eyes became even more malicious. He shouted in a deep voice. Win without a fight? Don't even think about it. I Bai Hao am one of the 10 heroes of King City. I am famous in the city and idolized by countless young protoss. How can I admit defeat without a fight in front of so many people? Don't I care about my face and reputation? After hearing this, Ji Tianqing nodded seriously and said, well, your analysis is quite reasonable. In this case, I can only beat you until you admit defeat. At that time, you will be seriously injured and like Shui Bufan, you will need at least 8 to 10 years to recover. Bai Hao frowned. After hesitating for a moment, he growled with a firm expression. Even so, I will do my best to withstand at least 2 moves. I can withstand 1 more move than Shui Bufan, which proves that I am stronger than him. Ji Tianqing smiled and said, you are ambitious. Then take this. After that, he slowly raised his right hand and clenched his fist to gather his momentum. Suddenly, a strong wind blew in the arena, and an invisible divine power surged wantonly. When a mountain-sized golden fist shadow appeared, the entire space in the arena froze. The great divine power suppressed Bai Hao, making his body bent and difficult to breathe. Large beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. But he gritted his teeth and held on. His right hand held the hilt of his sword, and his eyes stared at Ji Tianqing, showing an incomparably tenacious will. He watched as Ji Tianqing raised his right fist and was about to punch him. At the critical moment, Bai Hao's eyes flashed with hesitation. Finally, he gritted his teeth and shouted in a low voice, stop. I admit defeat. Ji Tianqing's fist was halfway out, but he had to stop. He looked at Bai Hao with a puzzled expression. Didn't you have a backbone just now? Why did you change your mind in the blink of an eye? Bai Hao replied expressionlessly, knowing that you are no match for him, you still insist on holding on. That's not courage, that's stupidity. Ji Tianqing frowned and asked again, didn't you say that you want to withstand 2 moves to prove that you are stronger than Shui Bufan? Bai Hao replied with a dark face, in the same situation where you made a move, he was seriously injured and unconscious, but I was unharmed. Turns out that I am still stronger. Ji Tianqing didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He asked through voice transmission, your master is the 2nd prince, right? Bai Hao was stunned for a moment and asked in confusion, how do you know? All these years he had never exposed his faction. He had always been secretly helping the 2nd prince. Logically speaking, Ji Tianqing shouldn't have known. Ji Tianqing revealed a meaningful smile. If the upper beam is not straight, the lower beam will be crooked. Your shamelessness is really the same. Chapter 3046. If it were anyone else who humiliated the 2nd prince like this, Bai Hao would have beaten them up. However, the other party was Ji Tianqing. He could only suppress his anger and pretend that he did not hear anything. There was no other way. He could not beat him. Goodbye. He cupped his hands expressionlessly and flew away without hesitation. Ji Tianqing felt that it was meaningless. He curled his lips and flew back to the viewing platform. The nearly 1 million God Clan citizens in the square were all confused and had dumbfounded expressions. Many people whispered to each other, asking and discussing. What's going on? That's it? What a scam. That Bai Hao admitted defeat just as Tianqing was about to make a move. Did he pee his pants because of Tianqing's aura? Or did they already fight with their divine souls? Shui Bufan was defeated in 1 move. Bai Hao is not much stronger. It's natural for him to admit defeat. But isn't he too spineless? Shui Bufan took 1 move. He should be more manly when he lost. Yeah. Bai Hao surrendered without a fight. He was overwhelmed by Tianqing's aura. How cowardly does that sound? The people found it difficult to understand Bai Hao's actions. They were even more curious about Ji Tianqing. However, the 2nd prince on the ceremony platform nodded secretly. A look of relief flashed in his eyes. Finally, there's a smart one. He's not as dumb as Shui Bufan. If he were to be sent up and knocked out by Tianqing, I would have 1 less lackey in the next few years. Soon the 2nd battle began. The 2 young geniuses went up to the arena. They fought until the sky darkened and divine light filled the sky. After a quarter of an hour, the winner was decided. They left the arena one after another. The 3rd battle began. Ji Tianqing was not interested in watching the battle. He was whispering to Ning Xiuan to help her solve her doubts. Suddenly he caught a glimpse of the 2 figures in the arena. One of them was a thin young man with a head of white hair. This immediately piqued his interest. He observed the battle expressionlessly. Zhen Hong, who was beside him, also stared at the arena with a serious expression, carefully watching the battle. Ning Xiyuan was somewhat puzzled and asked via voice transmission, "Young Master Tianxing, didn't you say you weren't interested in watching the battle? Could it be that there's something special about the two geniuses on the stage that is worthy of your attention?" Ji Tianxing nodded slightly. He stared at the white-haired youth and said, "That guy is here to ambush us. We'll meet him soon." "Snipe you?" Ning Xiyuan stared blankly for a moment before revealing an expression of disbelief. "What kind of genius is qualified to snipe you? According to my knowledge, there are only 2 or 3 people in the entire Blood Flame Divine Kingdom." Ji Tianxing smiled and said calmly, "Not only him, there are 3 other young geniuses who are targeting me. Of course, it's their mission to snipe me. Whether or not they succeed is another matter entirely." Ning Xiyuan said without hesitation, "It will definitely fail. Those people are too whimsical." Although the white-haired youth's strength was very strong, his combat experience was very abundant, and he even grasped many powerful divine abilities and ultimate skills. Furthermore, his strength also reached the 6th-level Divine Lord realm. He only used 80% of his strength and easily won after exchanging 200 moves with his opponent. But in the eyes of Ning Xiyuan and Zhen Hong, Ji Tianxing was a war god who had never been defeated before. Just based on those young geniuses participating in the battle today, none was his match. Because he was already a pinnacle Divine Lord powerhouse. Competing in martial arts with these young geniuses was simply bullying people. 2 hours later, it was Zhen Hong's turn to go on stage. Her opponent was called Yu Wuqing, a pinnacle genius of Cloudy Sun County, a wealthy aristocrat with an illustrious family background. This person's strength reached the 5th-level Divine Lord realm and cultivated over 20 kinds of divine abilities and ultimate skills. He was more adept at lightning-fast ambushes. The 2 people exchanged blows on the stage. Yu Wuqing transformed into 7 phantoms, and his true body hid in a corner of the stage. He used incomparably dazzling assassination techniques to drown out Zhen Hong's figure. Zhen Hong couldn't find his true body for the time being, so she followed Ji Tianxing's instructions and used the dragon race's ultimate skills with all her might. As the saying went, a strong person could defeat 10 skilled people. She punched out with the dragon elephant divine fist and broke the divine art shadows that filled the sky, forcing out her opponent's true body. Yu Wuqing was very indignant and wanted to hide himself again to use an even more dazzling divine art. Zhen Hong was like a storm, continuously using 4 dragon race's ultimate skills. Dragon Shadow Palm, Heavenly Dragon Strike and Soaring Dragon Slash were all used. The entire stage was filled with Golden Dragon Divine Light, and dragon roars echoed. Yu Wuqing was beaten until he covered his head and fled like a rat. He barely lasted 4 moves before being knocked to the ground. When Zhen Hong used the 5th move, he was severely injured and vomited blood, falling onto the stage. Yu Wuqing was defeated just like that. No matter how strange his divine art was or how fast his movement technique was, he couldn't withstand Zhen Hong's violent attacks. After all, Zhen Hong's dragon race's ultimate skills were too domineering and specialized in dealing with fancy moves. This round of battles finally ended. The 17 young geniuses advanced to the next round. Among them were Ji Tianxing, Zhen Hong, and the 4 intermediate godlords under Prince Lian. It was already afternoon and the scorching sun was even hotter. The nearly 1 million god race members in the plaza were dazzled and delighted. No one was willing to leave. Soon the 2nd prince and the 3rd prince finished drawing lots. Out of the 17 young geniuses, 1 was lucky enough to advance to the next round. The other 16 people were divided into 8 pairs to fight on the stage. This round of battles was very crucial. It was the moment that determined the fate of the contestants and tugged at their heartstrings. The victors would enter the top 9 and have the right to enter the Blood Flame Mystic Realm to receive the baptism of the Blood Flame Sacred Tree. The 8 losers would have to fight for the 10th place. The chances were slim. In the first battle, the 2nd prince's confidant defeated a noble genius from the Xianxia County. The 2nd prince's brows relaxed and his expression relaxed. He finally felt somewhat comforted. After all, in this round, Ji Tianxing's opponent wasn't one of his men. Instead, it was a genius from the 5th prince's faction, a white-haired youth named Yi Ningwang. The 2nd and 3rd battles continued one after another. The contestants were the elites of the elites. All of them had extraordinary strength and were proficient in all kinds of divine arts. Every battle was brilliant. All kinds of gorgeous, dazzling, bizarre and strange divine arts were displayed on the stage one by one. The millions of spectators felt their blood boil and their spirits rise. They cheered excitedly from time to time. In the fifth battle, Zhenhong stepped onto the stage again. Her opponent was a foreign race genius from the southern border. He was a skinny youth with the bloodline of the flame wolf. This person's aura was sinister and his willpower was tenacious and resolute. He had the characteristics of the wolf race's bloodline. Most importantly, his strength had reached the peak of the 5th degree realm. He was only one step away from the 6th degree realm. When Zhenhong fought with him, the process was exceptionally difficult. From the beginning, she was suppressed by the flame wolf youth. The other party relied on his super-fast speed and rich battle experience to beat Zhenhong back. After exchanging 10 moves, Zhenhong finally erupted with great potential and used the powerful Heavenly Dragon Star-breaking slash. Only then did she defeat the Flame Wolf youth's various divine arts and injure him, causing him to fall onto the stage covered in blood. However, the Flame Wolf youth wasn't defeated. He actually boiled his bloodline and took the risk to stimulate his potential, breaking through to the 6th level Divine Monarch realm. Chapter 3047. This battle was a battle that would determine their fate. If they won, they would enter the top 9 and receive the baptism of the Blood Flame Sacred Tree. The Flame Wolf youth was from a foreign race and could not become a noble in the Blood Flame Divine Kingdom. Naturally, he could not obtain too many cultivation resources and it was difficult for him to stand out. Therefore, he placed all his hopes on this grand ceremony. It was also because of this that he took the risk of burning his bloodline and risking his life. Fortunately, he successfully broke through to the 6th stage. Such tenacious willpower and terrifying wolf-like nature made countless people cry out in alarm. When he successfully broke through, everyone was boiling and erupted into earth-shattering cheers and shouts. Even the nobles and experts on the 4 viewing platforms looked at the Flame Wolf youth in a new light and admired him. Zhenhong was under great pressure. Even her confidence was shaken. The Flame Wolf youth became even more ferocious and charged over wantonly, forcing her to retreat. Feeling helpless, she subconsciously turned her head and glanced at Ji Tianqing on the viewing platform. She wanted to know what Ji Tianqing's reaction and expression would be. If Ji Tianqing signaled her to admit defeat, she would rather give up the baptism of the sacred tree and immediately admit defeat. If Ji Tianqing supported her to continue fighting, she would never surrender even if she was seriously injured and unconscious. When she looked at Ji Tianqing, she saw a smiling face and a serious and focused gaze. Young master has never been interested in watching the battle, but he watched the entire process of my battle very seriously. Even if I lose, I can't let him down. This thought flashed through Zhenhong's mind and she immediately became spirited and full of fighting spirit. At this moment she saw Ji Tianqing's lips move silently. It was lip reading. He immediately understood. Ji Tianqing said 4 words. Reverse blood berserk. Zhenhong's body trembled and her heart was filled with shock and disbelief. Young master actually wants me to use that trump card? Reverse blood berserk was one of the last trump cards of the 18 Dragon Clan's ultimate techniques. After using it, one's bloodline would flow backward and enter a berserk state. Not only would their appearance change, but their combat prowess would also increase by 5 times. Only the divine dragons and the Dragon Blood God clan could use such a powerful skill. After all, if an ordinary god race bloodline were to flow in reverse, they would definitely go mad and self-destruct or burn their bodies on the spot. Only the Dragon clan, whose physical bodies were incomparably strong, could unleash such a self-destructive divine ability. Didn't young master teach me not to reveal too many trump cards? Zhenhong tried to figure out what was going on while he fended off the Flame Wolf youth's fierce attacks. Could it be that young master is confident that as long as I use the inverse berserk divine ability, I can defeat my opponent? He had only exposed 1 trump card, but he could conceal even more trump cards? I understand now. After understanding Ji Tianqing's intentions, Zhenhong no longer hesitated and immediately used reverse blood berserk. Roar. She suddenly let out a low roar and her entire body ignited with golden flames that soared into the sky, bursting forth with an incomparably violent aura. Then nearly 1 million god race people witnessed with their own eyes the shocking changes that happened to her within the raging golden divine flames. Her originally tall and strong body actually expanded violently, expanding to a height of 1,000 feet in the blink of an eye. Her body was as big as a mountain and she looked the same as before. She still had the appearance of a dragon god warrior, but she was wilder and more violent. Her entire body was covered with golden dragon scales, like a layer of natural golden armor. Her arms and legs bulged with smooth muscle lines, not only filled with strength but also with a wild beauty. A golden dragon horn more than 30 feet long grew out of her head, and her face was also covered by golden dragon scales, revealing only a pair of blood-red eyes. Under her tailbone, a 60-foot-long three-pronged dragon tail emerged. Her hands covered in dragon scales had also turned into sharp dragon claws. This was the appearance of the dragon god clan after going berserk, and also Zhenhong's strongest state. She stood in the sky, looking down at the tiny flame wolf youth, and her entire body burst forth with soaring dragon might and battle intent. Roar! With a piercing dragon roar, she swooped down like a meteor, charging toward the flame wolf youth. The flame wolf youth had long been shocked by her berserk state, and his pupils constricted and he was on guard. At this moment he was suppressed by her berserk aura, and his battle intent weakened a lot and his aura weakened a lot. Sky Wolf Transformation. At this critical moment, the flame wolf youth no longer held back and used his trump card. He ignited the flame wolf bloodline again and turned into a 100-meter-tall red flame wolf, charging toward Zhenhong with an indomitable will. In the next moment the two giant creatures collided and their strongest power exploded. Boom! An earth-shattering sound exploded in the arena, shaking the 9 heavens. Golden and crimson divine light blended and exploded, filling the entire arena. The arena shook violently, and the sky-blue shield kept fluctuating. Even the ground of the huge square was shaking and countless people were shaken to the ground. But no one felt that it was dangerous. They were so excited that their blood was boiling and they forgot where they were and cheered and shouted. After all, this was the most exciting and hot-blooded battle in this god blood ceremony. No matter the result, Zhenhong and the Flame Wolf youth were famous in the capital, and millions of god clan members would remember them. After a long time, the colorful divine light gradually dissipated. The arena regained its clarity and the winner was decided. Zhenhong stood in the sky unharmed and golden light flickered all over her body like a goddess of war. No, to be exact, it should be the golden dragon goddess of war. Her expression was calm and her eyes were emotionless. She looked at the ground without focus. Is this the ultimate power of the dragon god bloodline after the berserk state? Is this the berserk state that even I would be afraid of? She muttered to herself. Although it was a question, her tone was firm and there was no doubt in it. She closed her eyes and muttered to herself, "So it is. Master never lied to me. This is the feeling of ultimate power, so good." At this moment, Zhenhong finally realized her own strength and experienced the feeling of being a powerhouse. Her mentality also quietly changed and matured. From the obedient and humble maid captain in the past, she had finally become a descendant of the Dragon God clan. She had self-confidence, a desire for great power and a vision for the future. He knew. From this moment on she was no longer ordinary. The Flame Wolf youth's outcome was a little tragic. There were more than 20 wounds all over his body and they were all deep to the bone. He lay on the arena covered in blood, twitching involuntarily and groaning in pain. He had already lost. The pain of the physical body was far less than the disappointment and pain in his heart. Why did I meet her? He murmured with lifeless eyes, and his heart was filled with unwillingness. Originally he could break through on the spot in the arena and reach the 6th level of the Divine Lord realm. This was already a miracle that shocked the capital. He would definitely defeat his opponent, successfully enter the top 9, and get the chance to be baptized by the sacred tree. Everything was so beautiful. From then on, his fate went against the flow and he became a genius powerhouse that everyone looked up to. But unfortunately that was still a dream. Now the dream was shattered. Chapter 3048. Zhenhong and the Flaming Wolf youth were not enemies. It was just fate that made them opponents. Even if the winner was decided, there was no enmity between them. The Flaming Wolf youth looked up at her and said in a hoarse voice, "You won." Zhenhong removed her berserk state and returned to normal. She landed not far in front of him. She looked at the Flaming Wolf youth calmly and said, "You are also very strong. It is also an opportunity for you to break through on the spot in the arena. Although you lost to me, you still have a chance to fight for the 10th place. The flaming wolf youth was stunned and smiled bitterly. The 8 losers will fight for the only spot? Zhenhong said expressionlessly. My benefactor taught me that to become a true expert, I have to go through many 1 in a million tests in my life. If you don't even dare to fight for the 1 in a million chance, you don't deserve to be an expert. The flaming wolf youth was stunned again and immediately showed an ashamed expression. He nodded and said, You are right. Thank you for your guidance. Also help me thank your benefactor. After that, he struggled to stand up with his injuries. He bowed to Zhenhong and turned to leave the arena. Although he was defeated and left the arena, his back was straight. His confidence and determination reappeared. Although the battle between Zhenhong and the Flaming Wolf youth could be said to be the most exciting and hot-blooded battle since the beginning of the ceremony. Nearly 1 million God Clan people discussed excitedly for a long time. But soon as one exciting battle after another played out, everyone's attention was diverted. The 6th battle. A white-haired youth named Yi Ningguang appeared. He was one of the 4 geniuses under Prince Lian that Ji Tianqing had paid attention to. This person was thin and wore black leather armor. He had short white hair and looked very capable. His face was cold and his aura was malicious. His eyes were as frightening as a poisonous snake's. After entering the arena, he stared coldly at the northern viewing platform and stared straight at Ji Tianqing. When Ji Tianqing flew into the arena, his lips curled into a sinister sneer. Ha! My luck is quite good, much better than those 3 guys. The mission of sniping you will be completed by me in the end. Yi Ningguang said coldly and was quite proud. Kid Dino, it is your greatest honor to be seen as an opponent by the Emperor. As long as I defeat you in the arena, I will be rewarded by His Majesty with resources and treasures worth 1 billion. I really have to thank you. As he spoke, Yi Ningguang stretched out his hands. A black light flashed in his palms and 2 black scimitars appeared. Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and said with a smile, Your luck is indeed not bad. Among the 4 great lackeys, you are the first to be defeated by this monarch. Of course, a cannon fodder like you is not worthy to be this monarch's opponent. Being defeated by this monarch is also the most glorious experience of your life. His tone was relaxed and casual without the slightest bit of bravado. He was just stating a fact. Yi Ningguang, on the other hand, was greatly humiliated. He furrowed his brows and his eyes flashed with murderous intent. Brat, you're courting death. Ji Tianqing's lips curved in a cold smile, saying indifferently, The matter of West Wind Town, even the prince did not tell you. During the battle at West Wind Town, he had severely injured the 5th prince and killed dozens of divine monarchs, including several divine monarchs. If Yi Ningguang knew about this matter, he would not be so confident at this moment. Sure enough, Yi Ningguang furrowed his brows and asked in confusion, What West Wind Town? What did you do? Ji Tianqing laughed involuntarily, looking at him with pity. Little guy, you must have offended the prince. Yi Ningguang immediately denied. How is that possible? I am loyal to the monarch. Then why did he send you to your death? Ji Tianqing sneered. Yi Ningguang could no longer suppress his anger and roared, You talk too much nonsense, go die. As he roared, Yi Ningguang waved his black scimitars, turning into a cold black light that attacked Ji Tianqing. His speed was extremely fast, like lightning. The divine ability he used was also very strange. It turned the entire arena into night, dark and cold, like a place of death. In addition, there were hundreds of death blades hidden in the darkness, ready to attack Ji Tianqing at any time. He was fully prepared and used his full strength right from the start. This divine ability was strange and mysterious, so powerful that it made people's hearts palpitate. Countless God Clan members in the square cried out in alarm, their faces filled with worry. The nobles and experts on the 4 viewing platforms also looked at Yi Ningguang in a new light. They stared at Ji Tianqing, waiting to see how he would deal with it. But everyone was disappointed. Ji Tianqing stood in place, not moving an inch. His expression was still indifferent as he slowly raised his right hand. He clenched his fist again, releasing golden light that condensed into a mountain-sized dragon-elephant phantom. Then he threw it out in a destructive manner. It was the same move as before, but more powerful and contained more nomological power. Although it was gorgeous, it was boring to watch it a second time. Boom. Crack. The next moment the dragon elephant divine fist hit the black light, creating an earth-shattering sound. Instantly the entire arena was filled with invisible divine power and shook violently. The sky blue shield also shook violently, creating turbulent waves. Under countless shocked gazes, the black death aura that filled the arena instantly collapsed and dissipated. The black light that resembled a lightning bolt of death also exploded into fragments that filled the sky. Yining Wang's figure appeared and he spat out a mouthful of blood. He drew an arc in the air and smashed into the edge of the arena with a dull thud. He was severely injured with just one punch. He was unwilling to give up and wanted to get up and fight again. But he realized that his arms were broken, his legs were shattered, and his internal organs were shattered. Even the meridians and bones in his body were in a mess, broken and twisted inch by inch. After suffering such heavy injuries, his body was almost destroyed. Want to fight again? Impossible. Even if he went into seclusion to heal, it would take him at least 20 years to fully recover. No. Yining Wang couldn't accept such a blow. His eyes were red as he roared with grief and anger. Swoosh. Ji Tianxing covered 10 miles with a single step and appeared in front of him. He raised his right hand again and clenched it into a fist that emitted golden light. Yining Wang was terrified. His eyes were filled with fear and dread. His opponent's intention was clear. If he didn't admit defeat, he would have to take another punch. In his current state, he would be finished if he took another punch. Not only would his divine body be smashed, but his divine spark would also be severely damaged. By then it wouldn't be something that could be recovered in a few decades. Before Ji Tianxing raised his fist, Yining Wang couldn't wait and shouted at the top of his lungs, "Stop! I admit defeat." He was afraid that everyone couldn't hear him. Ji Tianxing pretended not to hear him and crippled him with one punch. That would be a huge loss. Therefore he shouted so loudly that it shook the sky. Ji Tianxing frowned and retracted his fist. He said with disdain, "Just admit defeat. Why are you shouting so loudly? It's indeed glorious to be defeated by me, right?" Translator. Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations. Chapter 3049. Yining Wang was filled with grief and indignation as he left the arena with endless humiliation. He flew back to the eastern viewing platform and landed beside Prince Lian. He knelt in front of Prince Lian in shame and kowtowed to beg for forgiveness. "Your subordinate is useless and has disappointed your majesty. Please punish me, your majesty." Prince Lian, who was dressed in a black robe with golden threads, waved his hand expressionlessly. "Leave and focus on healing your injuries." Seeing that Prince Lian was not angry and had no intention of punishing him, Yining Wang heaved a sigh of relief. After acknowledging the order, he hurriedly retreated to the side to heal his injuries. However, after he calmed down and recalled Prince Lian's reaction, he muttered in his heart, "I lost to that kid in front of everyone and lost face, but your majesty is not angry at all. Your reaction is very calm. Could it be as that kid said, your majesty already knew the result and was certain that I was not his match? So, it is reasonable for me to lose and it is impossible for me to win?" The more Yining Wang thought about it, the more confused he became. Doubts flashed through his mind. "Since your majesty knows that the kid is very strong and that the 4 of us are not his match, why do you still want us to snipe him?" However, Yining Wang could only suppress his doubts and did not dare to ask. At the same time, the other 3 young geniuses had the same question in their hearts. These 3 middle godlords were 2 men and 1 woman. Their appearances and attire were very strange. They had already fought on the arena and easily defeated their opponents to enter the top 9. Before Yining Wang went on the arena, they were full of confidence that Yining Wang would be able to defeat Ji Tianxing. However, after witnessing the battle with their own eyes, they realized that Ji Tianxing was much stronger than Yining Wang. Since that was the case, asking them to snipe Ji Tianxing was just asking for trouble. Ziman Luo, who was wearing purple leather armor and had a tall and graceful figure, hesitated for a moment before bowing to Prince Lian. "Your Majesty, there is something that I do not understand." Hearing her words, Yining Wang and the other 2 guessed what she wanted to ask. Instantly, everyone's gaze turned to Prince Lian to see how he would answer. Prince Lian glanced at Ziman Luo and said leisurely, "I naturally have my own reasons for making such arrangements. You all just need to carry out your mission. There's no need to make too many guesses." Ziman Luo's body instantly stiffened. She hurriedly bowed and apologized, My lord, please forgive me. I have overstepped my boundaries. Prince Lian nodded slightly and said, Yining Wang has already completed his mission. You will need to complete the next mission. No matter who met Zhenhong, they would do their best to defeat her. Although she had successfully entered the top 9 and was qualified to receive the baptism of the Blood Flame Sacred Tree, she was still unable to do so. However, everyone's ranking was different, and their positions under the Blood Flame Sacred Tree were also different. We must make her rank lower so that she will receive less benefits when she receives the baptism of the Sacred Tree. Ziman Luo and the other two bowed and acknowledged the order. Prince Lian continued, If you meet Tianxing, you won't be his match. But you have to try your best to withstand a few more moves to exhaust his strength. Also, don't forget to use the flame and death words. As long as you can do this, your mission will be completed and I will reward you. Hearing this, the eyes of the three brightened. They had vaguely understood something. Just as they had guessed, Prince Lian already knew that they were not Tianxing's match. He had asked them to attack Tianxing, not to defeat him. Instead, he wanted them to use the black, death, and flame skills when they fought with Tianxing. As long as they could do this, they would be rewarded. The three of them immediately understood that Prince Lian had other plans. The key was the 3 words divine formula. Although Yining Wang had lost to Ji Tianxing. However, he had successfully used the black, divine incantation on the arena. Next, as long as they met Ji Tianxing and successfully used the death and flame skills, their mission would be complete. When they thought of this, the 3 of them were even more impressed with Prince Lian's shrewdness and methods. They felt that this lord was really unfathomable. The 8 rounds of battles had finally ended. Ji Tianxing, Zhenhong, Ziman Luo and the rest had successfully advanced to the next round. Including the lucky ones who had a bye, there were a total of 9 geniuses. They would compete for the final ranking later. As for the 8 eliminated geniuses, they would continue to battle in the arena to fight for the only place to advance. The third prince announced the rules. The 8 defeated geniuses could choose whether to participate in the battle to obtain the 10th place. The Flaming Wolf youth had already taken an elixir to stabilize his injuries. When the third prince's voice fell, he flew into the arena without hesitation. Obviously, he was determined to obtain the 10th place. The other 7 defeated geniuses instantly fell into hesitation. 3 of them were seriously injured and were close to fainting. They could no longer participate in the battle and could only give up regretfully. The other 4 were still in stable condition and had retained some of their strength. However, they had all seen the Flaming Wolf youth break through to the 6th stage in the arena. They had all witnessed the Flaming Wolf youth's strength and methods. Therefore, the 4 of them weighed the pros and cons for a moment. In the end, 2 of them gave up. There were only 2 geniuses left who still had hope for the 10th place. They went into the arena one by one and sparred with the Flaming Wolf youth. The result was as everyone had expected. The 2 young geniuses lost regretfully. The Flaming Wolf youth used his vigorous strength and tenacious battle intent to obtain the 10th place in the end. He finally had the qualifications to enter the Blood Flame Secret Realm and receive the Sacred Tree's baptism. After the duel ended, he glanced at Zhenhong and silently bowed to him before leaving the dueling ring. Next, the final ranking battle began. The top 9 geniuses no longer drew lots to determine their opponents. Instead, they used a challenge system to determine their strength and ranking. Simply put, the 9 geniuses could challenge each other. As long as they were named, they would have to fight on the arena to determine the winner. If they refused to fight on the arena, they would lose a match. After the challenge ended, the final ranking would be determined according to the number of matches each person won. When the third prince announced the rules, the 8 geniuses were all eager to fight. Everyone's gaze was searching the various viewing platforms as they weighed their targets. Only Ji Tianxing's expression was indifferent as he stepped across the sky and landed on the arena. His body was as straight as a sword as he stood proudly on the arena. His hands were behind his back as he exuded a powerful aura. His gaze swept across the entire arena as he announced a few names in a sonorous voice. I want to challenge Gu Chunfeng, Shi Yuanlong, Qin Yun, Ziman Luo, a total of 7 people. Other than him and Zhenhong, the other 7 geniuses were all named by him in public. This was equivalent to announcing in front of millions of people that I want to challenge all of you. I will definitely get the first place. All of you should obediently admit defeat. Fengyun Reading Network. Chapter 3050. When Ji Tianqing's voice sounded, the entire square was in an uproar. Close to 1 million god race people revealed shocked expressions and let out cries of disbelief. No one expected that he was actually so domineering. With an absolutely domineering attitude, he challenged all his opponents by name. This kind of thing rarely happened in the previous divine blood ceremony. The last time it happened was a few thousand years ago. However, geniuses who dared to challenge all their opponents like him were generally peerless monsters. Most likely they would sweep the field. The million people, all the nobles and powerhouses were all so excited that their blood surged, revealing expressions of incomparable anticipation. Of course, there were also many people who booed, criticizing and belittling Ji Tianqing. They all insisted that Ji Tianqing was trying to please the crowd with claptrap, and that he would lose all face in a moment. For example, Prince Duanmu thought so. On the ceremony stage, the third prince was all smiles, looking radiant with delight. He said to the second prince beside him, "Second royal brother, this prince told you before. When the final ranking battle comes, young Master Tianqing will definitely save time and challenge all his opponents in public. You see, this prince was indeed right? The second prince frowned and sighed helplessly. With his strength, making this choice is understandable. Of the 7 people challenged by Ji Tianqing, 3 were Prince Lian's people. The other 3 young geniuses were his confidants that he secretly nurtured. Only one was a noble descendant of the capital. He had always been loyal to the king's neutral faction. This result made the second prince very gloomy. Originally, he had more than 20 geniuses under his command participating in the grand competition. He did not expect that in the end, only 3 people entered the top 10. The effort and the return were not proportional at all. 100 breaths of time passed. Ji Tianqing stood alone on the stage, but no one went up to compete with him. The 7 geniuses who were called out all had ugly expressions. They were hesitating and weighing the pros and cons helpless. Ji Tianqing could only call out their names one by one. "Since you all are unwilling to take the initiative to go up on the stage, then this prince will challenge you one by one. Gu Chunfeng." As he shouted Gu Chunfeng's name, a noble youth stood up on the southern viewing platform and answered with an embarrassed expression, "Young Master Tianqing, I admit defeat." This young genius was precisely the top dignitary of the capital city. His family did not cling to any prince and was only loyal to the king. They were the mainstay of the neutral faction. Gu Chunfeng had no enmity with Ji Tianqing. He had witnessed Ji Tianqing's fights with his own eyes, so he had a good understanding of Ji Tianqing's strength and methods. He knew very well that even if he forced himself to go up to the ring and compete with Ji Tianqing, he would only be defeated in seconds. If he were to be severely injured, it would affect his performance in the upcoming battles and cause his ranking to fall. Then the losses would outweigh the gains. Therefore, it was wise to admit defeat decisively. Many nobles and experts thought of these reasons and expressed their understanding of Gu Chunfeng's decision. However, the millions of commoners in the square were not happy and burst into a discussion. There were also many people who booed and sneered at Gu Chunfeng's decision. Everyone wanted to see a battle between geniuses. They were also looking forward to the appearance of a dark horse to defeat that arrogant fellow Ji Tianqing. However, Gu Chunfeng directly admitted defeat. Wasn't this too cowardly? Couldn't he have some backbone? Couldn't he have a good fight with Ji Tianqing and let everyone have a good look? After Gu Chunfeng decisively admitted defeat, the third prince announced the result and recorded it. Then Ji Tianqing continued to call out names. Shi Yuanlong. His loud voice spread throughout the square. Countless people looked towards the northern viewing platform, searching for Shi Yuanlong's figure. This person was a confidant of the second prince and was also one of the 10 heroes of the capital. His strength was not far from Xue Bufan and Bai Hao's. However, Xue Bufan and Bai Hao's ending was obvious to all. They were both defeated by Ji Tianqing in one move and did not even enter the top 10. Their situation was very tragic. After being called out by Ji Tianqing in public, Shi Yuanlong stood up with a gloomy face. Being stared at by countless people, he was embarrassed and ashamed. Although he really wanted to go on stage and fight with Ji Tianqing, even if he lost, he would not lose face. However, he had to consider the consequences. After being injured by Ji Tianqing, would he still be able to challenge others? If he ended up at the bottom of the top 9, wouldn't his loss be even greater? Therefore, he could only bow his head to reality and reply weakly, "I also admit defeat." Hearing his reply, many nobles and powerhouses nodded secretly to express their understanding. On the ceremony stage, the second prince also secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, this kid was rational enough and did not act rashly. However, the people in the square could not take it anymore and shouted even more emotionally. Hey, can't you geniuses have some backbone? All of you admit defeat and surrender. Why don't you just stop fighting and just use your mouth to rank? Is Xianxia that terrifying? Can't you top geniuses make us look at you in a different light? This is too boring. Is anyone going to go on stage to fight? Under the agitation of the crowd, the people shouted and roared at the top of their lungs. At the same time, their impression of the young geniuses had plummeted. When Gu Chunfeng and Shi Yuanlong heard the discussions of the people, they felt even more ashamed and their faces turned red. At this time, the third prince recorded the results. Ji Tianxing had won another round. Ji Tianxing continued to call out names. Qin Yun. Unfortunately, Qin Yun was also one of the geniuses groomed by the second prince. He kept a low profile and his strength was slightly stronger than Shi Yuanlong and Bai Hao. However, he did not fish for fame and used the title of the top 10 heroes. However, after thinking about it for a long time, he still felt that Ji Tianxing was too strong and he could not match up to him. If he went on stage, he would definitely be beaten up by Ji Tianxing and would have to leave the stage with injuries. A wise man knew better than to fight when the odds were against him. Under the gaze of the crowd, he stood up and shouted, "I admit defeat." Since Gu Chunfeng and Shi Yuanlong had set the example, it was not embarrassing for him to admit defeat. However, by doing so, Ji Tianxing had won 3 rounds consecutively without lifting a finger. The people's discussion became louder and they became more agitated. Some of the hot-tempered people from the deity tribe even started to curse and slander the young geniuses. Even the dignitaries and experts on the viewing platforms didn't look too good. It was fine if 1 or 2 people had admitted defeat, but 3 people had admitted defeat in a row. Wasn't this too shameful? Were the young geniuses of Bloody Flame Holy Country so spineless? This year's Divine Blood ceremony could have been the most exciting one. How did it become the most boring one? Tianxing's strength was very strong, but his reputation wasn't that great. It was not to the extent that the young geniuses did not even dare to fight and admitted defeat. This was too childish. This could not go on. As a result, many of the leaders of the rich and powerful families, as well as those experts with high reputations, protested to the 2 princes. Fengyun Reading Network. Chapter 3051. In a short 20 breaths of time, at least 40 over nobles and powerhouses sent voice transmissions to the 2 princes to express their protest, or put forward the corresponding ideas and suggestions. All in all, everyone only had one request. Hurry up and end this boring and awkward situation. Ji Tianxing stood on the stage alone, calling out the names of the young geniuses one by one, but he scared everyone until they admitted defeat. He was domineering and awe-inspiring. But where would the royal family put their face? The Bloodfire Divine Kingdom's young generation was so weak? Wasn't this slapping the Bloodfire Divine Kingdom's face? They had to think of a way to stop him. The second prince and third prince also had a headache. The 2 exchanged a glance, both revealing helpless bitter smiles. The challenge competition is like this. Young Master Tianxing wants to challenge everyone. We can't stop him either. After all, he didn't break the rules either. Yeah. Young Master Tianxing's strength is too strong. This is obvious to all. Those few young geniuses want to preserve their strength and are not willing to make meaningless sacrifices. This is also something within reason. Have us come forward to intervene? How do we stop it? Could it be, we have to announce in public that young Master Tianxing won 3 matches in a row and is already very tired, his stamina consumption is great. So we have him leave the stage first and rest for a while? Isn't this nonsense? He didn't even move a finger. What stamina consumption? The 2 princes secretly communicated via voice transmissions, full of gloomy ridicule. Finally, the 2 brothers reached a consensus. Forget it. Ignore those nobles and old fellows. Pretend not to hear. And hold on a little longer. Anyway, 3 people already admitted defeat. At most 1 or 2 more and it will be over. The 3 geniuses under Prince Lian's command have an eagerness to give it a try. They shouldn't admit defeat, right? This can work. At least let the commoners watch a few matches. Alright, let's do it like this. Hence, the challenge competition continued. It was still Ji Tianxing's roll call time. With Xianxia. Very unfortunately, Xianxia was still a person under the second prince. If he also opened his mouth to admit defeat, the three geniuses under the second prince would be wiped out in one fell swoop. Even though his strength reached the 6th level Divine Lord realm and his foundation was even deeper. Compared to Xue Bufan, Bai Hao, Shi Yuanlong and the others, he was stronger. However, he did not have the slightest confidence that he could defeat Ji Tianxing. His first reaction was, of course, to admit defeat. But the most depressing thing was that he was the 4th person to be called out. If he was the first to be called out, he would simply admit defeat without any psychological burden. Now the millions of God race clansmen were making a ruckus and the crowd was agitated. These young geniuses with illustrious reputations had greatly disappointed the common people. They were currently enduring criticism and humiliation. Even if he wanted to admit defeat, he had to muster up the courage and bear the enormous pressure. After hesitating for a long time, Xianxia finally braced himself and left the crowd, flying towards the arena. Ji Tianxing glanced at him in surprise but didn't say anything. The second prince furrowed his brows and cursed inwardly. Xianxia, that idiot, has he not considered the consequences of his impulsiveness? Tianxing doesn't have any relationship with you, so he won't show you any mercy. With that thought in mind, he was about to send a voice transmission to Xianxia to remind him, who knew that Xianxia stood still on the arena without any intention of making a move. He actually cupped his hands towards Ji Tianxing and said in all seriousness, "Young Master Tianxing is in high spirits and has an extraordinary aura. You defeated me with just an invisible divine power. I am definitely not someone who doesn't know how to appreciate favors. I admit defeat here and thank you for saving my face." After saying that, Xianxia left the arena without even looking back. Ji Tianxing frowned, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. What the hell? I didn't do anything at all. I defeated you with just an invisible divine power? And saved your face? Why are you so dramatic? On the ceremony stage, the second prince was stunned for a moment before revealing a gratified smile. You're worth teaching. The millions of God race citizens in the square also had dumbfounded looks on their faces. The crowd was quiet for a while before bursts of discussion broke out. Xianxia actually admitted defeat too? He has some backbone and finally went up the stage to spar. When did they spar? They didn't make a move at all. Didn't you hear what Xianxia said? They used an invisible divine power to resist before. He's not Tianxing's match. Wow. Indeed worthy of being a godlord powerhouse. The fight was formless and the victor was decided silently. Although what you all said makes sense, why do I feel that something is off? That's right. Even if they fought before, we can't understand it either. There's no appreciation value. Countless citizens discussed animatedly, only feeling that Xianxia and Ji Tianxing's fight was unfathomable. Even if someone felt that something was off, they did not dare to ask. All in all, Xianxia fooled many citizens and finally admitted defeat without being scolded by everyone. The third prince announced the result loudly. Ji Tianxing won 4 matches in a row. There were only 3 people left who were challenged by him. They were the 3 young geniuses under Prince Lian. Before Ji Tianxing could continue to call out names, Ziman Luo took the initiative to fly out of the viewing platform and towards the arena. Her face was gloomy as she stared sharply at Ji Tianxing. Her entire body was filled with a strong fighting spirit. The citizens in the arena originally thought that she would admit defeat after going up the stage like Xianxia. But no one expected that she would land on the arena and immediately pull out a divine whip surrounded by purple flames. After shouting, she attacked Ji Tianxing without even saying goodbye. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. With a swing of the divine whip, dazzling divine light filled the sky. Purple flames surrounded the sky and covered the sun. Nearly 100 shadows of divine whips, carrying peerlessly swift and fierce might, enveloped the entire arena. Seeing this scene, the citizens who were uninterested and discussing animatedly earlier were instantly energized. Everyone's eyes lit up as they quickly looked up at the arena and watched the battle with anticipation. Great. Finally, someone has made a move. It's Ziman Luo. She's very strong. I wonder if she can defeat Tianxing? Regardless of whether she can defeat Tianxing or not, at least she dares to make a move. She's much stronger than the other geniuses, who said that women are inferior to men. I think she's braver than the others. Ziman Luo, from today onwards I'm your fan. I'll support you forever. It's time to make a name for yourself. As long as Ziman Luo defeats Tianxing, she can win supreme glory and surpass all the other geniuses. It wasn't just the commoners who were present. Even the nobles and powerhouses were looking forward to it. Everyone was hoping to see a miracle. However, this was destined to be an extravagant hope. Even though Ziman Luo went all out and used the flame, divine formula to release the most violent power, Sumo's attack was still not enough. Ji Tianxing's expression did not change. He raised his fists and punched out with all his might. Boom. Crack. Two incomparably huge shadows of dragons and elephants carried supreme divine power that could suppress the ages and crush the heavens and the earth. They destroyed all the divine light shadows with a loud bang. The purple flames that filled the sky dissipated on the spot. Ziman Luo also felt as though she had been struck by lightning. Her body curled up into a ball and she was sent flying 10 miles away. Chapter 3052. Ziman Luo, who had shrunk into a ball, smashed onto the edge of the arena. She rolled a dozen times on the ground and only stopped when she hit the sky blue barrier. She was in so much pain that her body was twitching. Black blood spurted out from her nose and mouth, and her spirit was also very weak. Being hit by the dragon elephant divine fist head-on, she almost died on the spot. She was like an ant being crushed by a giant rock. Ji Tianxing's strength and the power of the dragon elephant divine fist were far beyond her imagination. Fortunately, she was mentally prepared and knew that she was not Ji Tianxing's match. Hence, she had no intention of winning. She wore 2 sets of divine armor and protected herself well. She only hoped that she could use the yen word to complete her mission. Now she got what she wanted. Not only did she use the yen word, but she also preserved her life and divine Dao foundation. It was not a loss. While she was twitching on the ground, she was secretly rejoicing. Fortunately, I was smart enough to wear 2 sets of divine armor in advance. Otherwise, my divine body would have been destroyed and my divine core would have been severely damaged. As this thought flashed across her mind, she suddenly sensed that Ji Tianxing was about to raise his hand to cast another spell. If she took another punch, she would not be able to escape death even if she had 2 sets of divine armor protecting her. She immediately panicked and shouted at the top of her lungs at the fastest speed, "I admit defeat." Just as she said those 3 words, a mountain-sized dragon elephant shadow raised its 4 hooves and stomped down. That huge hoof, which seemed to have materialized, was right above her head. If she was a little later, she would have been stomped into meat paste by the dragon elephant shadow. Fortunately, the dragon elephant shadow stopped in midair and was only 3 feet away from her. Phew, that was close. Ziman Luo heaved a sigh of relief. Her hanging heart was finally at ease. However, a formless divine might suddenly descended and struck her ruthlessly. Bam! Ziman Luo's body instantly crumbled into dozens of pieces. Fresh blood splattered all over the ground. Even her divine core was severely damaged and she fainted on the spot. Seeing this scene, the nearly 1 million God race citizens in the plaza exclaimed. Countless people's faces were filled with shock as they whispered to each other. Of course, the commoners could not see any clues. They only felt pity for Ziman Luo's defeat. However, on the eastern viewing platform, Prince Lian furrowed his brows and his face darkened. The other 2 young geniuses were startled too, as their eyes were filled with flames of fury. Bastard! You despicable bastard, you're simply cruel and vicious. Bastard! Ziman Luo has already admitted defeat. Why are you still so ruthless? Ordinary people might not be able to see it, but these geniuses could see it clearly. The dragon elephant phantom did not touch Ziman Luo, but a formless divine might crushed Ziman Luo's divine body. Prince Lian couldn't expose him on the spot due to his status. The 2 young geniuses were close friends with Ziman Luo. It was only natural that they would seek justice for her. Hearing their shouts, many nobles and experts came to their senses. Everyone recalled the scene from before and understood the whole story. Countless people looked at the ceremonial stage to see how the 2 princes would handle this. The second prince frowned and thought to himself, Tianxing is really ruthless. He actually destroyed Ziman Luo's divine body. This is offending Prince Lian to the extreme. However, I do admire this kid's way of doing things. Anyway, he has already formed a deadly feud with Prince Lian. Of course, he'll do his best to take revenge. The third prince was also very worried. He sighed and said, "Sigh, I've been advising him not to make an enemy out of Prince Lian. Now it seems that he didn't listen to me at all. Instead he's taking revenge even more seriously." However, since it had already happened, he still had to think of a way to deal with it. Therefore he looked at Ji Tianxing with a stern expression and asked, "Tianxing, someone accused you of violating the rules of the arena. After Zimen Luo admitted defeat, you even severely injured her. How do you explain this matter?" Ji Tianxing had already retracted the dragon elephant phantom. With his hands behind his back, he replied calmly, "This is not an accusation but a slander. I strictly abide by the rules of the arena. How did I break the rules?" The third prince said expressionlessly, "The rules of the arena competition state that external forces are not allowed and no one is allowed to die. Ziman Luo was severely injured by you. Her divine body was destroyed but she didn't die. In this case you indeed didn't break the rules. However, the problem is that after Ziman Luo admitted defeat she was still injured by you." Ji Tianxing explained again, "Everyone saw that when Ziman Luo admitted defeat I had already stopped. As for the formless divine power that destroyed her divine body, it was the aftereffect of this remarkable power. It couldn't be prevented from erupting. My cultivation isn't high enough. Currently I still can't control it as I wish. I've made a fool of myself in front of everyone." As soon as he said that, many commoners, nobles and experts stopped pursuing the matter. However, how could the two young geniuses beside Prince Lian believe his words? "Bullshit. It's obvious that you used a dirty trick to injure Ziman Luo on purpose. Tianxing, don't try to twist the truth. Don't think of getting away with it." The two young geniuses were filled with righteous indignation. They accused Ji Tianxing ferociously. Ji Tianxing looked at them indifferently. He curled his lips and said, "In the arena competition swords have no eyes. I've already shown mercy by not killing her. Since she dared to enter the arena, she should have been prepared to be severely injured. She can only blame herself for overestimating herself and not admitting defeat in time. If she had admitted defeat directly like the previous few, how would she have ended up like this?" After saying that, he added another sentence with a cold smile. "Right, I'm going to challenge the two of you next. If you don't want to end up like Zimen Luo, admit defeat now." Hearing these words, the two young geniuses were instantly enraged to the point that smoke was coming out of their 7 orifices. However, in the eyes of the others, Ji Tianxing's words were not without reason. Especially the 4 young geniuses who admitted defeat. They all nodded in agreement and rejoiced in their hearts. "Fortunately, I was smart enough to admit defeat directly. Although face is important, our lives are more important. Zimen Luo is a living example. Whoever dares to laugh at us for surrendering is an idiot." The two young geniuses were hopping mad. They insisted that Ji Tianxing was abusing his position to avenge a private grudge. The third prince had no choice but to step forward and announce the result with a dignified expression. "Everyone please be silent. As the host and supervisor of this grand ceremony, I will announce the result. Tianxing did not violate the rules of the arena competition. His words and actions did not cross the line. The challenge competition will continue. Those who participate in the following battles, please be careful." On the surface, it sounded like the third prince was impartial in dealing with the problem. However, in reality he was helping Ji Tianxing to absolve himself of any wrongdoing. The two young geniuses were unconvinced. However, they could not do anything to the third prince. They looked at Prince Lian for help. Prince Lian's expression was dark. His gaze was gloomy as he sent a few instructions. After the two young geniuses listened carefully, they nodded their heads and complied. When they looked at Ji Tianxing again, their eyes were filled with resentment and killing intent. Fengyun Reading Network. Chapter 3053. The two young geniuses gave up. The third prince had already announced the results. They could not continue to pester him. The two could only fly up the stage and take the pieces of flesh and blood that were scattered on the ground and Zimonluo's divine spark away. Prince Lian exhorted the two of them as well as the changes in their eyes, all fell into Ji Tianxing's eyes. Although this was just a very small detail. But Ji Tianxing keenly sensed that the two young geniuses' eyes changed. Prince Lian must have exhorted something. In this arena competition, Prince Lian was unwilling to be left out. He must be playing some tricks and schemes. Very soon the plaza and the stands quieted down. The challenge continued. Ji Tianxing looked coldly at the two young geniuses and asked in a deep voice, "Shi Yunxiao, Zhou Xian, which one of you will go first?" The two were called out, but they were not in a hurry to go up the stage to challenge. They looked at each other, their expressions very solemn. Their eyes were also very complicated. "Yunxiao, you go up first." "No. Brother Tianqi, you go up first. As long as you can complete the mission, I can take care of the aftermath." "Yunxiao. Have you really thought it through?" Zhou Tianqi looked at Shi Yunxiao very emotionally. His heart and hands were trembling. Shi Yunxiao nodded solemnly and said through voice transmission, "Brother Tianqi, one of us has to sacrifice to complete the Lord's orders. You have a family and clan and I'm alone. So, I'm the most suitable to cover the rear." Zhou Tianqi's eyes were somewhat red. His heart was heavy as he said in a choked voice, "Yunxiao, I will remember your friendship in my heart for the rest of my life." "That's enough." Shi Yunxiao nodded and patted his shoulder with a smile. "Brother Tianqi, go." Zhou Tianqi did not say anything else and nodded heavily. Then he turned and flew across the sky, landing on the stage. Zhoosh. Zhou Tianqi stood still on the stage, 1,000 feet away from Ji Tianxing, facing off with a murderous aura. His entire body flickered with purple light as he wore a set of dark purple armor. He held a purple heavy sword that was tinged with black as he stared fixedly at Ji Tianxing. "Brat. You are vicious, cruel, tyrannical, arrogant, and despicable." Zhou Tianqi angrily glared at Ji Tianxing and fiercely said, "In this battle, you are no longer challenging me, but I am taking revenge on you. I want to avenge Ziman Luo and kill you, you bastard." Zhou Tianqi cursed with righteous indignation. His body emitted a murderous aura that soared to the sky, and a bloody light lingered around him. Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows and the corners of his mouth curled into a playful sneer. "So, you want to have a duel with this monarch in public regardless of life and death?" Zhou Tianqi furrowed his brows and quickly shut his mouth. Ji Tianxing continued, "All right, Benjun will give you this opportunity. You want to take revenge for Ziman Luo, right? You shall sign a life and death contract in front of everyone as proof." "You." Zhou Tianqi's eyebrows twitched violently from the provocation. His face turned green and white, revealing an incomparably ashamed and resentful expression. He was just saying it. He had never thought of signing a life and death contract. If he really wanted to have a life and death duel with Ji Tianxing, then he would be courting death. His outcome would definitely be 10 times worse than Ziman Luo's. However, Ji Tianxing caught his words and looked at him with contempt, making him unable to back down. What could he do? He couldn't possibly swallow the words he had just said back into his stomach, right? "Zhou Tianqi, what are you still standing there for?" Ji Tianxing sneered when he saw him standing there without moving. "Weren't you filled with righteous indignation and your blood boiling just now? Now you want to be a coward? Or, you're courting death." Zhou Tianqi could no longer suppress his murderous intent. With a furious roar, he brandished his sword and charged toward Ji Tianxing. "Heavenly Fiend Death Star Slash." Zhou Tianqi roared furiously. He held the purple-black heavy sword with both hands and brandished it wildly without holding back. The purple-black sword light covered the sky and covered the sun. At this moment he burned his divine blood and used a secret technique to stimulate his potential, erupting with 3 times his combat strength. The entire arena space was filled with billions of purple-black divine flames, filled with an incomparably chilling aura of death. The thousands of purple-black sword lights were like the blades of death from the underworld. They turned into violent hurricanes and enveloped Ji Tianxing's figure. Such a gorgeous scene. The countless deity race citizens in the plaza were dazzled by the sight. They revealed astonished expressions. Many people exclaimed, "Oh my God! What a gorgeous divine technique! What a powerful and terrifying aura of death! I always thought that grayness and coldness represented death. I didn't expect death to be so gorgeous." Zhou Tianqi's strength and foundation are stronger than the 10 heroes of the royal city. His understanding of divine abilities and secret techniques is also deeper. If Tianxing can easily neutralize such a powerful divine ability and secret technique, then he deserves to be called the strongest. If Tianxing is not seriously injured, then Zhou Tianqi's divine technique will be defeated. Let's wait and see. Under the gaze of millions of people, Ji Tianxing was in the boundless domain of death. He unhurriedly raised his palms and met the blades of death that blotted out the sky. Sky-piercing finger. Sky dragon palm. A scene that left countless people dumbfounded appeared. Ji Tianxing was actually multitasking. His hands were performing different divine abilities at the same time. His left hand pinched the fingers of a sword and pierced out a dazzling golden divine light. It was like a giant sword that tore apart the boundless darkness. His right hand bloomed with 7-colored divine light, and a palm shadow as huge as a mountain struck out, crushing the purple-black sword lights that filled the sky. Only kacha and rumble sounds could be heard, echoing endlessly between heaven and earth. The entire arena shook violently, and the sky-blue shield also fluctuated wildly, rippling with layers of ripples. The light of death that shrouded heaven and earth was quickly dispersed by the divine golden light and disappeared in the blink of an eye. The purple-black sword lights that filled the sky were also shattered into billions of pieces by the giant palm. Without a doubt, Zhou Xian's divine ability had been defeated. He was also struck by Ji Tianxing's finger. A huge bloody hole appeared in his chest and purple-black blood spurted out. Then he was struck by the giant palm. Blood gushed out of his mouth as he flew backward in a sorry state. While he was still retreating in midair, a bloody line appeared in the middle of his body, and he was split into 2 halves. Plop. The 2 halves of his body fell from the sky onto the arena. Purple blood splattered all over the ground and finally rolled to the edge of the arena. Victory and defeat had been decided, and the result was obvious. Ji Tianxing was unscathed, but Zhou Xian was defeated miserably and had his divine body destroyed. Fortunately, only his divine body was destroyed. His divine spark was severely damaged and cracks appeared on it. He was lucky enough to keep his life. His outcome was similar to Zimonluo's. He would need to recuperate in seclusion for more than 100 years before he could fully recover. Soon the arena regained its clarity, and the deafening noise also dissipated. Zhou Xian's divine spark flew out from half of his body. He shouted in panic, "I admit defeat." Feng Yun Reading Network. Chapter 3054. Zhou Xian felt relieved after using the voice of his soul to admit defeat. His tense soul finally relaxed. He thought to himself, "Damn bastard, he's really strong. Luckily, the rules of the arena competition restricted him so I could keep my life. Now I've completed my mission and successfully engraved the death character on his body. The rest is up to Yunxiao." As he thought of this, he used his divine will to look at the eastern viewing platform and glanced at Yunxiao. Then he couldn't hold on any longer and fell unconscious. The third prince announced the result loudly. Ji Tianxing won 6 consecutive victories. Yunxiao flew onto the arena expressionlessly, collected the 2 halves of Zhou Xian's body and godhead, and sent them back to the viewing platform. When he handed the corpse and godhead to the guards, he stared at Zhou Xian's godhead and muttered to himself, "Brother Tianqi, your mission is complete. Leave the rest to me." Finishing, he turned and flew towards the arena. His expression was emotionless, his eyes were calm like an ancient well, but his heart was filled with sorrow. At this moment he was unafraid of death, and his whole body emitted a special and powerful aura. When he stood still on the arena, Ji Tianxing frowned, a cold light flashing through his eyes. This kid's aura, his current state, he's already determined to die? Ji Tianxing carefully observed Yunxiao and thought to himself, "It's just an arena competition. He clearly knows that I won't kill him. At most I'll destroy his body and beat him into a coma. Why is he so determined to die? Why is he so calm? Could it be that Prince Lian wants to play some trick and needs him to finish the last blow?" Of the 4 young geniuses under Prince Lian, 3 had already been defeated by Ji Tianxing. Yunxiao was the last person and he would lose without a doubt. After he was defeated, even if Prince Lian had any other schemes or tricks, it would be difficult to use them. Therefore Ji Tianxing was sure. If Prince Lian wanted to play tricks, Yunxiao would be the most important person. As for Yi Ningwang, Ziman Luo and Zhou Xian from before, they were all used to pave the way. At the thought of this, Ji Tianxing had a flash of inspiration as he suddenly thought of something. However, Yunxiao saw that he was silent and seemed to have noticed something, so he didn't waste any more time and immediately attacked. Roar. He didn't use any divine weapons, but suddenly opened his palms and roared at the sky. He ignited his life's qi and blood, and burned his own soul, releasing a violent aura. Swoosh. Instantly, Xianxia's entire body emitted a bloody flame that soared into the sky. Like a 100-foot-tall torch, it lit up the entire square. His divine body and flesh was quickly burning and decomposing. It transformed into the purest divine power, causing the blood-red torch to grow taller and taller, its power becoming more and more turbulent. In the middle of the blood torch, there was a dark purple flame. That was Xianxia's divine soul fire at the same time. It was his final kill. Battle spirits returned to the west, unhindered throughout the ages. Black Death Infernal Spirit, please go to reincarnation. An ancient roar came from the blood torch that covered the sky. It was full of tragic and murderous intent. At this moment, the nearly 1 million people in the square were affected by the invisible aura. Everyone stopped talking and shouting and kept silent as they stared at the arena. Their expressions became solemn and their hearts were heavy. Many people were weak and couldn't understand what Xianxia was doing. But everyone could feel that Xianxia was about to die. He had used some kind of ancient secret technique, sacrificing his own life, all for the sake of completing the most dazzling and powerful attack. After all, his divine body was disappearing quickly, and ashes were scattered all over the ground. On the arena, only Ji Tianxing and the blood torch were left. The nearly 1 million people of the God clan, the dignitaries and the experts on the viewing platform. While their hearts were heavy and shocked, they also had many questions. What is Xianxia trying to do? It's just a martial arts competition. Tianxing won't kill him. Why is he sacrificing his life? He's using his life to use an ancient secret skill. Is he trying to kill Tianxing? These thoughts flashed through everyone's minds at the same time. The expressions of the two princes on the stage also changed abruptly. Their eyes were filled with shock. It's over. Xianxia is using his ultimate killing move. He would rather sacrifice his life to kill Tianxing. The third prince was filled with shock and anxiety. This must be Prince Lian's scheme. Even if he has to sacrifice Xianxia, he has to kill Tianxing on the spot. How ruthless. The second prince was also angry. He stared at Ji Tianxing anxiously and his face was full of worry. Although he and Ji Tianxing had not formed an alliance. But at this moment he definitely didn't want Ji Tianxing to be killed. Everyone's eyes were focused on the shocking blood fire in Ji Tianxing. At this moment Ji Tianxing observed the blood-red torch for a while. He finally saw some clues and his eyes lit up. Xianxia is burning his flesh and blood and igniting his divine soul flame. The blood fire is on the outside and the divine soul flame is hidden inside. This is his ultimate killing move at the cost of his life. The divine soul flame is his trump card. But Xianxia should know very well that with his strength and realm, even if he uses this ultimate killing move he can't kill me. So, before using this ultimate killing move, there must be some premeditation and foreshadowing. Ji Tianxing's eyes were fixed on the torch, but his brain was working at high speed, analyzing the truth as fast as he could. Since this is Prince Lian's scheme, he must have planned it long ago. Yining Wang Ziman Luo and Zhou Xian must have received his secret order to do something to me in advance. Otherwise, they wouldn't have made meaningless sacrifices and been seriously injured by me. But what exactly did they do? Ji Tianxing frowned with a grave expression. He tried his best to find out the truth. The blood-red torch, which was more than 100 feet tall, released endless blood fire that filled the entire arena. The area within a 10-mile radius was turned into a world of blood fire. Ji Tianxing was in the middle of it, enduring the burning of the blood fire. He was in a precarious situation. But as if he couldn't feel the pain, he still didn't counterattack. His body emitted a golden light that protected his divine body. He was still frowning as he pondered. The next moment, Xianxia's body completely disappeared. He had completely turned into blood fire and divine soul flame. The 100-feet-tall torch turned into a giant fire dragon. It let out an earth-shattering roar and blasted towards Ji Tianxing. At this critical moment, Ji Tianxing suddenly came to a realization and guessed the truth. He opened his eyes and stared at the fire dragon with a sharp gaze. He whispered, "Black Death Fire Soul, please go to reincarnation." Prince Lian is indeed sinister. He actually made the four of them use different types of secret skills. The first three will use Black Death and Fire. Then Xianxia will use his life to use the soul skill to complete the ultimate killing move of the Black Death Infernal Soul. Chapter 3055. Even though Ji Tianxing had guessed the truth from the clues, he didn't know what was going on. However, he still hadn't figured out how the Black Death and Flame divine abilities performed by the previous 3 people would affect him. Could it be that they risked serious injuries to use the 3 different types of divine abilities just to taint me with the auras of different powers? When Xianxia used his divine power to kill me, he could detonate the 4 energies and kill me instantly. That was Ji Tianxing's first thought. Then the Crimson Fire Dragon had already swooped down and was above his head. He didn't have time to think. He could only take out the Sword of Burial of Heaven and use his divine power. Sword breaks 9 heavens. The Sword of Burial of Heaven swung and a colorful light shot out. A giant sword 100 feet long appeared and drove away the endless blood. It was like a ray of light in the dark night. Boom. There was a deafening sound. The holy and berserk giant sword destroyed the blood flame dragon with a loud bang, causing blood flames to splatter all over the sky. Seeing this scene, the commoners in the square, the dignitaries, and the experts on the viewing platform all revealed looks of regret. Countless people thought that Xianxia's ultimate skill, which he had risked his life to use, was still defeated by Ji Tianxing. Even the 2 princes on the stage heaved a sigh of relief, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders. However, on the eastern viewing platform, Yi Ningguang and Prince Lian, who were beside him, had cold smiles on their faces. Their gazes became cold, mocking, and filled with killing intent. They knew that Ji Tianxing only destroyed the Crimson Fire Dragon. That was just a facade of grandeur. The real danger was the divine soul fire hidden in the Crimson Fire Dragon. Ji Tianxing was going to die. Even the Grand Prince and Yi Ningguang smiled cruelly. They couldn't wait to see Ji Tianxing's body explode, his godhead crumble, and his divine soul perish. As expected, when the crimson fire scattered, the purple divine soul fire also split into thousands of wisps. Swish, swish, swish. In just an instant, countless tiny wisps of spirit fire flooded Ji Tianxing like a torrential downpour. Boom. Then his entire body was surrounded by the purple divine soul fire. He turned into a giant purple fireball and rolled in the Crimson Fire Dragon. The purple fire surged and rose fiercely. Ji Tianxing's figure disappeared. The sudden turn of events stunned the millions of people. Countless people were shocked and couldn't help but open their mouths and exclaim. No one would have thought that Xianxia's secret skill would be so eerie with its hidden murderous intent. Then Ji Tianxing finally understood everything. When the innumerable wisps of purple soul flames attacked him, his heart suddenly trembled and his divine soul became ice cold. He had a premonition that death was imminent. Invisible forces in his divine body and divine bloods in his body were rampaging. They were 3 different types of invisible energy that had been hidden in his body for a long time. When the purple soul flames approached them, they became extremely active and violent. The 4 forces attracted and resonated with each other. They were about to explode. So that's how it is. As expected, those 3 fellows from before infected me with 3 different types of power. When the divine soul fire attacks, the 4 forces will explode at the same time. If my body explodes, my divine body, flesh, and godhead will all be destroyed. I will die. Ji Tianxing was enlightened. He finally understood Prince Lian's scheme. Prince Lian, oh Prince Lian, you are so shrewd and scheming. You let 4 insignificant cannon fodders use divine powers of different attributes and combine them to become a sure kill skill. This method is so sinister that no one except me can detect it. This person is extremely sinister. As this thought flashed through his mind, Ji Tianxing didn't have time to waste. The purple divine soul fire had already surrounded him. In the next moment, the 4 forces would combine and form the ultimate death skill. He didn't have time to think about how to get out of danger. At the moment of life and death, he instinctively activated the heaven-mending orb in his sea of consciousness and released endless white holy light. Swoosh. Suddenly, the dense holy white light exploded from his body and enveloped his whole body. The countless strands of purple divine soul fire were restrained by the powerful devouring power and couldn't riot anymore. The purple divine soul fire seemed to have a life of its own. Feeling the approaching danger, they all struggled violently to escape. However, how could they escape the devouring power of the heaven-mending orb? Hiss, hiss, hiss. With a soft sound, the countless strands of purple divine soul fire were swallowed by the heaven-mending orb and disappeared. Without the resonance of the purple divine soul fire, the three forces of black, death and flame could not completely explode. Although the three forces were still trying to riot in Ji Tianxing's body. However, they were destined to be futile. Ji Tianxing was already out of danger. He was wrapped in the holy white light like a pure white cocoon. He floated quietly in the arena filled with blood and fire. He first controlled the heaven-mending orb to swallow the purple divine soul fire and suppress it inside the divine orb. Then he used the power of the heaven-mending orb to remove the black death and flame in his body one by one. The three kinds of power were invisible and they were mixed in his body and bloodline. It would be difficult for him to finish cleaning them in a short time. Therefore, the cocoon formed by the holy light floated in the air and did not move for a long time. The entire arena was also very quiet. Only the endless blood and fire were surging. The millions of divine race people in the square all stared at the arena with their eyes wide open, unblinking. No one understood what Ji Tianxing was doing, nor did they know what he was going through. Everyone's heart was in suspense, waiting for the final result. However, the expressions of Prince Lian and Yi Ningguang changed dramatically on the spot. The sneers on their faces froze and the killing intent in their eyes faded. Seeing the purple divine soul fire disappear, they realized that something was wrong and guessed that their plan had failed. As expected, they waited for 10 breaths of time, but Ji Tianxing did not explode and die. The earth-shattering explosion, the purple divine soul fire, and the scene of Ji Tianxing's body being smashed to pieces did not appear. Their bodies stiffened as they glared at Ji Tianxing with resentment in their eyes. They roared in their hearts. Why didn't he explode and die? Our king's plan failed? The power of the Black Death infernal spirit did not explode? How is this possible? We've already succeeded. Damn it. Who the hell is that kid? I have carefully planned and implemented the plan in 4 steps, but it still failed to kill him? Did he already know about my plot and know the power of the Black Death and flame? Prince Lian stared at the white cocoon with a gloomy face and roared in his heart. This is impossible. If he has such terrifying intelligence, wouldn't he be able to predict the future? He must have been lucky to have a divine artifact protecting him. That was how he managed to survive. That must be it. Prince Lian would never admit that Ji Tianxing was smarter than him. He found a reason to believe that Ji Tianxing was just lucky to have a divine artifact to protect him. Otherwise, how could he explain why he had lost so miserably? Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. Chapter 3056. The square and the viewing platform were silent for 100 breaths of time. Until the blood and fire on the arena dissipated, the white cocoon disappeared and Ji Tianxing's figure reappeared. Everything was over. The arena was clear again and Ji Tianxing was safe and sound. It was only now that the millions of God race citizens, countless dignitaries, and experts revealed looks of intense shock. Countless people smiled, shouted, and cheered excitedly. There were even countless people who clapped and cheered excitedly. Among them were the 2 princes on the stage. An Zhenhong and Ning Xiyuan on the northern viewing platform, who had been on tenterhooks. Just now, Ji Tianxing was wrapped in purple soul fire and fell into a sea of blood and fire. He was in a precarious situation. The 2 of them were also worried and their hearts were tightly clenched. They hated that they could not bear the danger and pain for Ji Tianxing. Fortunately, it was all over. Ji Tianxing successfully resolved the crisis and appeared unscathed. The 2 girls were relieved and their hanging hearts finally fell back into their stomachs. The cheers and applause of the audience shook the sky, and it lasted for 10 breaths of time without stopping. Ji Tianxing stood in the arena with an indifferent expression, ignoring the excited crowd. He looked coldly at the eastern viewing platform and his eyes fell on Grand Prince Lian. The 2 of them looked at each other. Even though they were 10 miles apart, they could clearly see the coldness and killing intent in each other's eyes. There was no verbal communication between these 2 experts, and there was no need for provocation or ridicule. But both of them were well aware. Their hatred had grown and deepened to the point where they would not rest until one of them was dead. Moreover, both of them were extremely arrogant people. Neither of them would bow their heads and admit defeat. After the 2 of them looked at each other for a moment, Ji Tianxing's mouth curved into a mocking sneer. His meaning was obvious. So what if you are sinister? You can't beat me. You are not my opponent at all. Then Ji Tianxing withdrew his gaze and ignored Grand Prince Lian. It was a simple and subtle action, but it made Grand Prince Lian unable to restrain his anger. His face turned ashen and his fists cracked. If it were not for the fact that he was in public, he would have started a massacre to vent his anger. After taking a few deep breaths, he suppressed his boundless anger. There was no need for him to continue watching the battle. Staying at the scene would only make things worse. Thus he stood up expressionlessly and left the viewing platform. Yining Wang hurriedly took Ziman Luo and Zhou Tianqi's corpses and godheads and left dejectedly. Fortunately, everyone's attention was on Ji Tianxing. Even when Prince Lian quietly left, not many people noticed. At this moment the third prince stopped clapping. He was excited and his blood was boiling. He announced loudly, "Congratulations Tianxing for defeating Shi Yunxiao once again." At this point, Tianxing had completed 7 challenges and obtained an unprecedented 7 consecutive victories. This king must tell everyone that in the past 5,000 years, in the hundreds of divine blood ceremonies, this is the most glorious and pinnacle achievement. Now, I can announce in advance that Tianxing is the champion of this grand competition. He is fully deserving of the title of the strongest and the pride of the blood-flame divine country. The third prince's vigorous voice reverberated throughout the entire square and reverberated in the sky. His agitation and excitement infected the millions of divine race members, making countless people cheer. Although the divine race commoners in the square did not have the qualifications to take part in the arena competition, they witnessed the scene of the grand competition. However, they had personally witnessed the process of Ji Tianxing creating a miracle. They also felt a sense of participation and pride in their hearts. Today's experience was enough for them to brag about for the rest of their lives. The cheers of the audience were thunderous and did not stop for a long time. However, many of the dignitaries and powerhouses on the viewing platform frowned and started discussing secretly. Tianxing could win 7 consecutive battles and crush so many prodigies. It's indeed a miracle hard to come by in 1,000 years. But the third prince's words are not too strict, right? Yeah. According to the arena competition's rules, the other participants can still continue to challenge. What if a certain prodigy creates a miracle and obtains 8 consecutive victories? Although everyone is well aware that with Tianxing's strength and battle results he should be firmly in first place. But the third prince can't announce it publicly. What if a miracle happens and he gets slapped in the face? Forget it, don't bother so much. For a miracle like Tianxing to appear, it's already a once-in-1,000 years occurrence. How can someone possibly have 8 consecutive victories? I heard that Tianxing has a very close relationship with the third prince. He lives in the third prince's long-wind court. Therefore it's also reasonable that the third prince is so protective of him. This is a once-in-a-lifetime happy occasion, so let's not be picky about it. To be able to witness this miracle with our own eyes, we should be happy. Just as many dignitaries and powerhouses were discussing through voice transmissions, the second prince on the ceremony platform opened his mouth. He said in a loud voice with a dignified expression, "Tianxing has already obtained 7 consecutive victories. If you don't continue to challenge, you can withdraw from the arena to rest." Following this, the arena challenges will continue. The remaining participants can still go on stage to challenge. After all the challenges are over, the rankings will be based on their battle results. I repeat again, swords and sabers have no eyes on the arena. It's inevitable that there will be injuries. Please consider carefully. After he finished speaking, Ji Tianxing left the arena. He returned to the viewing platform with a calm expression. Zhen Hong and Ning Xiyuan quickly got up, held his arms and helped him sit down. The 2 women were full of excitement and their eyes were shining. They surrounded him and asked about his well-being, concerned about his injuries. "Don't be like this. I'm not injured. Calm down." Ji Tianxing didn't know whether to laugh or cry when he saw them carefully caring for him. Only then did Zhen Hong and Ning Xiyuan realize that they had lost their composure. They were a little shy and their cheeks were pink. Ji Tianxing looked at Zhen Hong and said with a smile, "Although the challenges will continue, there are only a few people left who can participate. Zhen Hong, as long as you don't have any accidents, you will definitely enter the top 3. Hearing this, Zhen Hong finally understood what Seiji was trying to do. "No wonder you were the first to challenge. This is not your style at all. It turns out that you are helping me to get rid of the strongest opponents first. Young master, you are so good to me." Zhen Hong looked at Ji Tianxing with sincere eyes. She was so moved that she was about to cry and her heart was about to melt. Ning Xiuan was also very envious of Zhen Hong. She admired and liked Ji Tianqing's kindness and strength from the bottom of her heart. Seeing the two women being so intimate with Ji Tianqing, countless people were envious and secretly sighed. No wonder he can get the favor of two stunning beauties. Even if he has two beauties in his arms, they won't argue. If I had such monstrous talent and strength like him, not to mention two stunning beauties, I would definitely gather 108 beauties and open a huge harem. This was the inner thoughts of most of the Protoss. Unfortunately, no matter how envious they were of Ji Tianqing, they could only look at him and sigh.